Chapter 1458. A bloody mist filled the starry sky. The four chosen had been killed on the spot, filling the air with the stench of blood. In the blink of an eye, a total of 4 chosen had died at Chu Fengmian's hands. Golden Venerate and the other chosen were shocked when they saw this scene. They thought that Chu Fengmian was only a quasi-emperor. At most, he was just a nobody who had had some fortuitous encounters. When Chu Fengmian had destroyed the law enforcement hall, the news hadn't spread in the sacred land. In their opinion, Chu Fengmian was at most a chosen who had had some fortuitous encounters. A holy son could fight 1 against 3, 1 against 5, and even 1 against 10. One had to know that the chosen of the sacred dragon mystic domain were a group of proud sons of heaven. They were geniuses among geniuses. Unless they were a monster like Emperor Yi, who would dare say that they could fight 1 against 10. However, when they saw Chu Fengmian kill the 4 chosen with a single move, Golden Venerate and the others understood. Chu Fengmian wasn't an ant like they had imagined. He was a true dragon. Chu Fengmian had concealed his strength so deeply. Kill. Attack together. This kid is a quasi-emperor after all. How heaven-defying can a quasi-emperor be? He can't use this kind of killing move more than a few times. Golden Venerate roared. Without the slightest hesitation, he clenched his fists and a long spear condensed in his palm. The long spear emitted rays of golden light. The space around the golden light was forcibly torn apart by its sharpness. Sky-ripping spear. The long spear in Golden Venerate's hand immediately stabbed at Chu Fengmian. The speed of the spear was extremely fast. A golden light flashed, and a cold, killing intent enveloped Chu Fengmian's body. A sense of danger was approaching. Golden Venerate wasn't the only one. The other chosen had also attacked at the same time. After witnessing Chu Fengmian's strength, the chosen understood that Chu Fengmian was definitely an extremely dangerous person. Their first move was a killing move. Killing moves filled the sky as they bombarded Chu Fengmian. Die! All the remaining chosens attacked Chu Fengmian at the same time. A bunch of ants. Primogeniture. First move. Chu Fengmian took a step forward. Above his body, the power of the ancestral sky dragon's bloodline was activated. Power gathered in the palm of his hand. Boom! That single claw strike caused the entire world to tremble. Even the starry skies were trembling. All of the killing moves were destroyed by that single claw strike. The Golden Venerate's long spear was snapped in half by the power of this claw. It lost its power and broke into 2 halves in the air. Blood splattered everywhere. The power of the chosen was shattered by this claw. Not a single one of them survived. Even the Golden Venerate suffered the same fate, turning into a mist of blood. The clouds of blood mist were still struggling in the air, trying to escape. But Chu Fengmian wouldn't give them the chance. With a thought, Chu Fengmian operated the sky, devouring secret technique. Suddenly, a vortex appeared behind him. The blood essences of these saints were devoured by the heaven-devouring mystic technique and sent to the divine tree for refinement. These chosen were all as strong as Emperor Gu. Furthermore, each of them had obtained many fortuitous encounters. Their blood chi contained surging spiritual energy, which was enough for the divine tree to grow again after being devoured. What's going on? What happened? Inside a large hall in the Holy Land, hundreds of tablets of various sizes were placed in the center of the hall. Each tablet had a name and a trace of spiritual energy recorded on it. A few Shangzis in the hall suddenly saw an ancestral tablet shatter. These memorial tablets represented the lives of the chosen. When a memorial tablet was broken, it meant that a chosen had fallen. Another chosen has fallen? Just as these people were discussing, 3 more tablets shattered one after another. It wasn't over yet. In just a few seconds, more than 10 tablets shattered. The chosens in the palace could no longer hold back their shock when they saw this scene. Something big has happened. What's going on? Why are the tablets of golden exalted and the others shattered? How long has it been? Didn't they just leave the sacred ground? The chosen of the 100 Hall Conference changed their expressions. They all knew what Golden Exalted and the others had gone to do. However, now that the tablets of Golden Exalted and the others had shattered, it meant that they had fallen. Quick, inform the higher-ups. Even the sacred dragon mystic realm couldn't bear the loss of more than 10 chosen. The sacred dragon mystic realm had existed for hundreds of thousands of years and had only nurtured thousands of chosen. Losing more than 10 chosen in one go was something that the sacred dragon mystic realm would need to spend thousands of years to recover. Streaks of light immediately flew out of the main hall. Golden Exalted and the others actually failed. In the Sacred Academy Hall, a few chosen of the Sacred Academy sect had gloomy expressions when they saw this. I didn't expect that we had underestimated this kid. Even Golden Exalted and the others couldn't kill him. It seems that this kid is stronger than we thought. However, there's still Little Emperor Yi. Little Emperor Yi should be able to kill him. Several saints of the Saint Academy sect were talking to each other. Their gazes were solemn. Even if Little Emperor Yi makes a move, he might not be able to kill that brat. Inform the holy scions of the 9 regions. The leader of the chosen said calmly. This kid left with Luoshi. He most likely plans to go to the 9 regions. The experts of our sacred ground are all in the 9 regions. Once we spread the news, they will be surrounded and attacked when they reach the 9 regions. At that time, there will be so many experts. This kid won't be able to survive. All right, let's do that. The chosen took out their jade talismans and began to transmit the news. On the other side, in the Star Sea, Chu Fengmian and Luoshi didn't leave after killing Golden Exalted and the others. The reason for that was because a figure had suddenly appeared before them and blocked their path. It was a young man in green robes. He looked extremely ordinary, but the aura on his body gave off an extremely ancient feeling. He was even more ancient than many of the ancient elders in the sacred dragon mystic realm. It was as if he had come from the ancient age. Only experts who had lived for countless years could have such a feeling. However, it had appeared on this young man. Chu Fengmian could even tell that this young man wasn't much older than Chu Fengmian. He wasn't even 30 years old. Chapter 1459. The green-robed young man in front of him was only a quasi-emperor, but Chu Fengmian could feel immense pressure from him. The pressure this green-robed young man gave Chu Fengmian was even greater than that of the 8 Tribulation Emperor Gu, Blood God Emperor Gu. It was unfathomable. This person isn't easy to deal with. Chu Fengmian's eyes flashed. He could see that this green-robed young man was a formidable opponent. Little Emperor Yi. Luo, she called out coldly the moment she saw the green-robed young man. Chu Fengmian also knew the identity of this green-robed young man. Little Emperor Yi had received Emperor Ye's power inheritance and was known as one of the strongest holy sons. Only such a character could give Chu Fengmian such immense pressure. When Long Qianju said that Little Emperor Yi and Little Ju Di were strong enough to fight 9 Tribulation Emperor Gu, Chu Fengmian didn't believe it. Now that he saw Little Emperor Yi with his own eyes, Chu Fengmian knew that this person was much stronger than 8 Tribulation Emperor Gu. Although he wasn't as strong as 9 Tribulation Emperor Gu, 9 Tribulation Emperor Gu couldn't kill Little Emperor Yi. At most, he could defeat him. To be able to survive 9 Tribulation Emperor Gu's attack was already terrifying, let alone a mere quasi-emperor. Little Emperor Yi, what are you planning to do here? Chu Fengmian's eyes flashed with seriousness. He thought that after dealing with Jin Zun and the others, he could safely return to the 9 territories with Luo Shi. As long as he returned to the 9 territories and obtained some treasures, Chu Fengmian had a good chance of stepping into the Emperor realm in one fell swoop. Chu Fengmian knew that there were many treasures in the Origin realm, but because he wasn't strong enough at the time, he couldn't obtain them. This time, Chu Fengmian wanted to return to the 9 territories, and the first thing he wanted to do was sweep through the treasures of the Origin realm to improve his strength. Once he stepped into the Emperor realm, Chu Fengmian would be able to fight even a 9th grade ancient emperor. He hadn't expected Little Emperor Yi to appear after dealing with Jin Zun. Although Little Emperor Yi was just one person, his true strength was dozens of times stronger than Golden Exalt and the others combined. I'm only here to borrow something from you. Since you know who I am, let's cut the crap. I have no enmity with your holy dragon sect, and I don't intend to kill you. Little Yi looked at Chu Fengmian as if he was sizing up his prey. It was as if Chu Fengmian was already in his bag. I need to condense a sword technique. I need your supreme sword chi. I know you have a total of 1,800 supreme sword chi. Hand them over, and I can let you leave. You want the supreme sword chi? Chu Fengmian's eyes turned cold. Since little Emperor Yi had come, Chu Fengmian knew that he didn't come with good intentions. Now, he wanted to ask Chu Fengmian for the supreme sword energy. The supreme sword Qi was a supreme treasure of the sword Dao. As a sword cultivator, how could Chu Fengmian give it to little Emperor Yi for free? The supreme sword Qi had already fused with Chu Fengmian's 9 regions sword technique. If he handed over 1,800 supreme sword Qi, Chu Fengmian's 9 regions sword technique would suffer a great loss. What's more, even if the supreme sword Qi was useless, Chu Fengmian wouldn't hand it over. He had never been afraid of threats in his life. Murderous intent flashed in Chu Fengmian's eyes. It seemed that things weren't going to be good between him and little Emperor Yi today. You don't plan to hand it over? I'm just giving you a chance. Although your strength is not bad, you're only above average in the Holy Land. You can't be considered a master. Little Emperor Yi looked at Chu Fengmian with incomparable contempt. Forget it. So what if you're a disciple of the Holy Dragon sect? In a few months, the Holy Dragon sect will completely disappear from the Holy Dragon's secret domain. I'll let you go first. Hand over the supreme sword Qi or die. Little Emperor Yi took a step forward and stared at Chu Fengmian. Shocking murderous intent surged from his body. Come and take it if you have the ability. Without batting an eyelid, Chu Fengmian pushed the power of his bloodline to the limit. What an ignorant little fellow. I gave you a chance. Since you don't know how to cherish it, don't blame me for being merciless. Little Emperor Yi shook his head as he watched. Suddenly, little Emperor Yi's figure moved. His spiritual power condensed at the tip of his finger, and he quietly pointed it at Chu Fengmian. Dustless. Rumble. This finger was called dustless. When it was pointed, heaven and earth were immediately subjected to an incomparably great pressure. Waves of spiritual power, strong to an unimaginable extent, immediately fell under this finger. The power of this finger alone was more terrifying than the power of an 8th tribulation Emperor Gu. The surging spiritual power was like a long river, drowning everything. Primal chaos. Beside Chu Fengmian, Luo Shi gathered her spiritual power and attacked in an instant. She could tell that little Emperor Yi wasn't someone Golden Exalt and the others could compare to. Even she couldn't stay out of this. An ancient primal chaos gate opened behind Luo Shi. Waves of primal chaos aura flew out and condensed in Luo Shi's palm. It transformed into a 5-colored ray of divine light that shot into the sky. Luo Shi, do you think I don't dare to kill you? Others may be afraid of Wu Dao, but I'm not. If I kill you, Wu Dao won't dare to cause trouble for me. So what if your 8th tribulation Emperor Gu? I, little Emperor Yi, have killed countless 8 tribulation ancient emperors. Today, I'll add another one to the list. Little Emperor Yi smiled coldly as he watched Luo Shi attack. He pointed his finger and the enormous spiritual power collided with the 5-colored ray of divine light. Under this power, the 5-colored ray of divine light was shattered. It was a pure collision of power. Although little Emperor Yi was only in the boundary emperor realm, his pure power was stronger than Luo Shi's, who had already stepped into the 8th tribulation Emperor Gu. This was the strength of a power inheritance. Even if one couldn't step into the heaven realm in the future. But little Emperor Yi was almost invincible in the emperor realm. Your bloodline is not bad. It should be the bloodline of an innate divine beast. Today, I'll kill you and take your bloodline first. Little Emperor Yi looked at Luo Shi. Suddenly, he gathered his spiritual power again and pointed with his finger. With a single point, the world shook. Suddenly, the entire starry sky was enveloped by the power of this finger. An incomparably huge power enveloped Luo Shi's body, breaking the spiritual power around her bit by bit. It was going to kill Luo Shi with a single point. Chapter 1460. Little Emperor Yi, I don't care what kind of power you've inherited, but since you dared to provoke me, today is the day you die. Chu Fengmian's bloodline power was activated at this moment. The power of the soaring serpent transformation also burst forth. Chu Fengmian's aura soared dozens of times. This kind of power was completely different from the previous Chu Fengmian. The world's edge sword case appeared behind Chu Fengmian. 2 dazzling sword lights immediately flew out and slashed toward little Emperor Yi. Do you think you're invincible just because you've inherited power? You're just a cripple. How dare you strut around in front of me? Cripple? Little Emperor Yi's expression changed when he heard this. He couldn't restrain his anger and was thoroughly enraged. Because he'd received the power inheritance, little Emperor Yi would never be able to step into the sky human realm. Therefore, he was a cripple. However, because of his power, no one in the sacred land dared to speak to him like this. Now that Chu Fengmian had spoken, he directly poked at his sore spot and immediately went crazy. Just because you call me a cripple, I'm going to kill you today. No, I'm going to torture you and cripple your cultivation. I'm going to turn you into a cripple like this. Little Emperor Yi said fiercely. A puny quasi-emperor dares to insult me? Go to hell. In terms of sword skills? Then let's see whose sword skills are stronger. Buzz. A green spiritual sword suddenly condensed in front of Little Emperor Yi. As it fell, it split into millions of swords and bombarded Chu Fengmian's two sword lights. At the same time, a terrifying sword intent enveloped Little Emperor Yi's body. The sword intent of the Sword God realm. Little Emperor Yi also had the sword intent of the Sword God realm. Moreover, it wasn't the kind that had just entered the Sword God realm. His comprehension of the sword Dao wasn't the slightest bit inferior to Chu Fengmian before he'd obtained the Sword Dao totem. Millions of swords collided with the two sword lights from the world's edge sword case. In an instant, they'd clashed millions of times and the sword lights were shattered one after another. However, the sword lights had also exhausted their power and returned to Chu Fengmian's hand. Little Emperor Yi's sword Dao was almost on par with Chu Fengmian's. What a powerful sword intent. No, this isn't your sword intent. It's Emperor Yi's. Chu Fengmian stared at Little Emperor Yi. He could also tell where this sword had come from. Little Emperor Yi had inherited Emperor Yi's legacy and his martial comprehension. This sword had once belonged to Emperor Yi. Now, Little Emperor Yi could also use it at will. I am Emperor Yi, and Emperor Yi is me. Of course this is my power. Brat, it seems you've had quite a few fortuitous encounters. You were actually able to withstand my attack. Young Emperor Yi stared at Chu Fengmian and sneered. Very well, I'll kill you today. Even if I can't step into the celestial realm in the future, that doesn't mean I can't kill celestials. Today, both of you will die here. It is your honor to be able to become my strength. Little Emperor Yi's hands moved. An ancient spear suddenly condensed and shot into the space before him. As the spear shot into the space, the surrounding space suddenly became incomparably congealed. The effect was almost the same as when Chu Fengmian used the Tianlong transformation to seal off space. The sky-locking spear. That's Emperor Yi's spiritual weapon. It's also fallen into this person's hands. Luo Shi's face darkened when she saw this. Little Emperor Yi hadn't just inherited Emperor Yi's martial Dao. Even Emperor Yi's spiritual weapon had fallen into his hands. Chu Fengmian, this little Emperor Yi isn't easy to deal with. Let's join forces and fight our way out. Luo Shi secretly transmitted her voice. Little Emperor Yi's strength had already exceeded her estimations. Although there had always been rumors about Little Emperor Yi's strength in the sacred land, after actually fighting him, she realized that he was even more difficult to deal with than the rumors made him out to be. What? You want to escape? Neither of you will be able to escape today. Little Emperor Yi seemed to sense Luo Shi's words and sneered. With a move of his hand, the tip of his green sword flashed and slashed towards Chu Fengmian and Luo Shi. Escape? Who said I wanted to escape? Little Emperor Yi, I'll tell you today that your sword technique isn't even worth mentioning in front of me. The sword intent of the divine sword realm enveloped Chu Fengmian's body. Chu Fengmian sneered. When he saw Little Emperor Yi's sword strike, the tip of his sword flickered, and he also slashed out with it. The moment this sword strike was unleashed, it drew upon the endless power of the stars and the surroundings and endlessly supported Chu Fengmian's sword. First move of the 9 mysterious sword technique. Voracious Wolf. Rumble. Endless power of the stars enveloped the sword. The sword light was like a river of stars that enveloped everything. When Little Emperor Yi's sword strikes struck the river of stars, they were all crushed by the endless power of the stars. What kind of sword technique is this? There's actually a sword technique like this in the heavens? When Little Emperor Yi saw Chu Fengmian's sword light, his face was filled with disbelief. Little Emperor Yi had received Emperor Yi's inheritance and even received all of Emperor Yi's memories. Back then, Emperor Yi had stood at the peak of his generation and knew countless sword techniques. However, he'd never seen Chu Fengmian use a sword technique like this before. Although the 9 profound sword technique had evolved from the 9 profound immortal technique, it was still a sword technique that Chu Fengmian had created. Even little Emperor Yi didn't know about it. Emperor Yi's 3 swords. Shattering the sea. Little Emperor Yi's hand moved, and the sword in his hand was completely different from before. He poured spiritual power into it, and it immediately transformed into a 10,000-foot-long sword light. Within this 10,000-foot-long sword light, ancient runes condensed. The sword slashed down from the sky and into the sea of stars. Suddenly, the sword chi within the sea of stars surged and was shattered by the shattering the sea. Rays of sword light flew out and slashed towards Chu Fengmian. Emperor Yi's 3 swords. Emperor Yi's ultimate technique. Chu Fengmian's eyes were cold. He could also see how terrifying this sword technique was. Emperor Yi's 3 swords was already infinitely close to an immortal technique. If Emperor Yi hadn't been just a half-step celestial realm cultivator back then and had truly stepped into the celestial realm and become a celestial realm cultivator, Emperor Yi's 3 swords would be a true immortal technique. However, although Emperor Yi's 3 swords were strong, Chu Fengmian's 9 profound sword technique wasn't weak at all. Moreover, his 9 profound sword technique was a true immortal technique. Chapter 1461. As the sword chi neared Chu Fengmian's body, his sword moved again. The power of the stars filled the sky once more and bolstered the sword in his hand. The power of the stars that had shattered the galaxy returned to Chu Fengmian's sword. On the tip of the sword in Chu Fengmian's hand, one could see specks of starry river. Every one of them contained terrifying power. In an instant, the sword was unsheathed. The sword chi was like a river of stars that swept across. Countless sword chi that approached Chu Fengmian were destroyed by the sword chi. This river of stars was aimed directly at little Emperor Yi, intending to drown him beneath it. Emperor Yi's 2nd sword. Shatter the earth. Little Emperor Yi roared angrily. The sword intent in his hand condensed into his 2nd sword and slashed down. The moment he waved his sword, countless sword chi shot through the sky. In an instant, the specks of stars were destroyed. You should be proud that you were able to take one of my attacks. But with this one, you must die. Little Emperor Yi said coldly. Die. Rumble. A beam of sword light shot up into the sky. It was only 300 meters long, but contained even more power than the sword light that was 10,000 meters long. It was enough to see exactly how terrifying the power was gathered within it. Under this sharpness, there was practically no one who could block it. The river of stars, the sky full of stars, the sword chi, everything was destroyed by this sword. It was a sword that could shatter the heavens and shatter the earth. The 3rd move of the 9 profound sword technique. Lutsuan. Chu Fengmian's expression was incomparably calm. When Emperor Yi used the 2nd sword technique, his sword struck out at the same time. The power of Emperor Yi's 3 swords was even more astonishing than Chu Fengmian had imagined. Emperor Yi's 3 swords should have been incomparably close to the first 3 moves of the 9 profound sword technique. But Chu Fengmian wasn't the 9 profound immortal sovereign. Even with the 9 profound sword technique, he could only display about 70% of its power. Little Emperor Yi, however, hadn't just inherited Emperor Yi's power. He'd also inherited Emperor Yi's memories and Emperor Yi's martial path. The 3 swords he'd unleashed were no different from the real Emperor Yi's. As a result, little Emperor Yi had the upper hand in this clash of swords. Rumble. The 2 swords clashed in the air and shattered at the same time. Little Emperor Yi's expression grew serious. He originally thought that dealing with Chu Fengmian would be as easy as crushing an ant. However, although he had the upper hand on the surface, he didn't gain any advantage at all in these few confrontations. 2 of Emperor Yi's 3 swords had been used. Now, young Emperor Yi's hopes of killing Chu Fengmian rested entirely on this 3rd sword strike. An ancient aura surged from little Emperor Yi's body. This was Emperor Yi's power. It had always been hidden within little Emperor Yi's body. It came from the ancient Emperor Yi, and it began to boil. Wait until I've killed you, kid. Once I've taken your fortune, my power will reach unimaginable heights. Then who cares about martial arts? Little Ju Di, let's see who will dare to challenge me. Little Emperor Yi stared at Chu Fengmian his eyes burning with desire. He had already thought of what level his strength would reach once he killed Chu Fengyan and obtained all of Chu Fengyan's treasures. It would be a level he couldn't even imagine. Wu Dao, little Ju Di, they wouldn't be his match. In that moment, little Emperor Ye's power was gathered to the limit. Without the slightest hesitation, the sword in his hand moved again. A tall, indistinct shadow slowly appeared behind him. It was Emperor Ye's shadow. As little Emperor Yi drew out Emperor Ye's power, the shadow coalesced into being. Emperor Ye's shadow slowly merged with little Emperor Ye's. It was as though the once invincible Emperor Yi had come back to life. Emperor Ye's third sword, cleave through the air. Chu Fengyan and Luo, she felt an incomparable pressure as little Emperor Ye's sword descended. Even Chu Fengyan, who'd experienced countless battles of life and death, felt his body tremble. Now, Chu Fengyan seemed to be fighting with a real expert half a step into the celestial being realm, a legendary expert. Die, kid, your sword skills, your woman, your fortune, all of it will belong to me, little Emperor Yi. Little Emperor Yi shouted excitedly. He watched as the sword gradually closed in on Chu Fengyan. Is this the last sword? Even before the tip of the sword came crashing down, Chu Fengyan could clearly sense how powerful it was. It was definitely more powerful than any sword art Chu Fengyan had ever seen. But Chu Fengyan's face showed no fear. On the contrary, he looked excited. He stopped Luo Shi, who was about to attack, and stepped forward alone. I'll use your blood as a sacrifice to this sword. Chu Fengyan looked at little Emperor Yi. Little Emperor Yi's body exuded a unique power. This power was enough to see through history and see into the future. A power that transcended time and space coalesced beneath Chu Fengyan's sword. The fourth move of the 9 profound sword art, Heavenly Secrets. Chu Fengyan had comprehended this new move during his seclusion in the 5 Spirits Hall. Today, his opponent had finally arrived. Just as the sword approached, Chu Fengyan's sword slashed out. Suddenly, the primeval bronze gate and the gate of Dharma and logos appeared behind Chu Fengyan, bolstering his body. At the same time, the roots of the divine tree tightly condensed the crystallized flesh on Chu Fengyan's body. The fourth move of the 9 profound sword art was no longer a martial technique, but a true immortal technique. As a mortal, one had to pay a great price to use an immortal technique. This was Chu Fengyan's trump card. Facing little Emperor Yi, Chu Fengyan didn't hesitate to use it. Sword. With a slash of the sword light filled the sky. These sword lights seemed to come from different eras, from one era to another. They followed Chu Fengyan's sword and gathered together to form a sword that transcended the river of time. The moment the sword lights collided, the world seemed to come to a standstill. In the blink of an eye, more than half of little Emperor Ye's sword was broken, while Chu Fengyan's sword light was still endless. Rumble. Little Emperor Ye's body was sent flying before his incredulous eyes. The sword chi that filled the sky tore his body apart, turning him into a bloody mist. An immortal technique. This is an immortal technique. You actually obtained an immortal technique. You shouldn't have been able to obtain something like this. I'll remember you. Wait until my strength improves, then I'll kill you and take this immortal technique. Just you wait. Chapter 1462. Little Emperor Ye's methods were endless. Chu Fengmian used the power of the Tianlong transformation, but failed to stop little Emperor Yi. He could only watch as little Emperor Yi left. Although Chu Fengmian defeated little Emperor Yi, he couldn't kill him. I didn't expect that even little Emperor Yi would make a move. Luoshi's eyes also showed some worry. Little Emperor Yi was one of the most difficult to deal with among the Holy Land's holy sons. Today, Chu Fengmian destroyed little Emperor Ye's body. The hatred between him and little Emperor Yi was irreconcilable, especially after little Emperor Yi learned that Chu Fengmian had the 9 profound immortal technique. There was no way he would let Chu Fengmian go. After this battle, little Emperor Yi would definitely break through to the Emperor realm. With little Emperor Yi's talent and accumulation, once he stepped into the Emperor realm, his strength would most likely soar dozens of times. The next time I fight little Emperor Yi, it won't be so simple, Luo, she said worriedly. It's fine. It doesn't matter. Little Emperor Yi was defeated by me this time, and I'll defeat you next time as well. Moreover, little Emperor Ye's body was destroyed by me this time. If he wants to step into the Emperor realm, he'll need to cultivate bitterly for a while. Chu Fengmian's eyes showed incomparable confidence. This time, Chu Fengmian returned to the 9 territories. He was determined to step into the Emperor realm. Chu Fengmian's accumulation was much more terrifying than little Emperor Ye's. After all, little Yi Emperor had received a strength inheritance, while Chu Fengmian's current strength was obtained by himself. Once Chu Fengmian and little Yi Emperor stepped into the Emperor realm at the same time, little Yi Emperor would be left far behind. Once Chu Fengmian also stepped into the Emperor realm, little Emperor Yi would be nothing but an ant. However, this time, Chu Fengmian could only be considered a Pyrrhic victory against little Emperor Yi. He had used all his trump cards, even the 4th style of the 9 profound sword art. This allowed little Emperor Yi to know that Chu Fengmian had obtained the secret of the 9 profound sword art. Once this secret was exposed, it would bring endless trouble to Chu Fengmian. However, little Emperor Yi might not reveal this secret. Who didn't want a 9 profound immortal technique? Little Emperor Yi also wanted the 9 mysteries sword art for himself. Given little Emperor Leaf's arrogant personality, after being defeated by Chu Fengmian, he would most likely go into secluded meditation. Then he would come back to find Chu Fengmian, kill him, and take the 9 profound immortal art. During this time, Chu Fengmian shouldn't have to worry about the 9 profound immortal art being exposed. However, this also reminded Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian could use the first 3 moves of the 9 profound sword art. After all, it was still within the category of martial skills. Even if others saw it, they would not be able to guess that it was the 9 profound immortal technique. However, the 4th style was the real immortal art. There were very few immortal arts in the world. The most recent one was the 9 mysterious immortal art that had appeared in the immortal burial continent. On top of that, Chu Fengmian must have obtained a lot of fortuitous encounters after returning from the immortal burial continent. It was obvious that the 9 profound immortal art had fallen into Chu Fengmian's hands. That would be troublesome. If he didn't have the confidence to kill, it was better not to use the 4th style. What should we do? Are we still going to the 9 realms? Luo Shi asked. Chu Fengmian and Luo Shi had just left the sacred land when they were ambushed twice. Venerated Kim and the others were fine, but young Emperor's attack had almost caused Chu Fengmian and Luo Shi to suffer heavy losses. If Chu Fengmian hadn't comprehended the 4th style of the 9 profound sword art, then even if they'd escaped with their lives, they would have had to pay a heavy price. Among the sacred lands chosen, there were others who were on equal footing with young Emperor. Little Zhu Di, Wu Dao, and a few other older chosen were no less powerful than young Emperor. No matter how strong Chu Fengmian was, there was still a chance he'd fail miserably in the face of repeated attacks. Let's go. Chu Fengmian nodded, his voice resolute. He had to go to the 9 realms. The ruins of the Sword Dao School should still be in the 9 realms. Chu Fengmian wouldn't allow anyone to take it away. However, Chu Fengmian also understood that if he swaggered into the 9 realms, the ambushes along the way would annoy him to death. Even young Emperor was willing to accept the Academy's offer, much less the others. If word of this got out, it wouldn't just be the chosen of the sacred land who'd come after Chu Fengmian. Experts from other powers would want to take his head and claim the bounty. Let's change the method and go to the 9 realms. Chu Fengmian's eyes flashed. He had a plan. Nirvana. Suddenly, Chu Fengmian's body changed. He took on the appearance of a young man. This was his appearance from his past life. He was a small cultivator, but his eyes were resolute. This is the Nirvana rebirth formula. It will allow you to change your appearance and hide your identity. Chu Fengmian looked at Luo Shi. With a thought, he transmitted a method into her mind. The Nirvana rebirth formula was the method of an ancient sect, the Sky Snatcher sect. This sect was very unique. They stole for a living and had plundered the treasuries of countless other sects. Eventually, their deeds were exposed and they were destroyed. However, the Nirvana rebirth formula was passed down and obtained by the Sword Dao sect. In his past life, Chu Fengmian thought it was fun and memorized it. It just so happened that he had a use for it now. The Nirvana rebirth formula wasn't difficult to learn. Luo Shi closed her eyes and pondered for a few seconds. She learned it all. Luoshi's body also changed into a new appearance. Although she was also an incomparably beautiful woman, her face was as cold as ice. People who saw her wouldn't dare approach her. Her temperament was completely different from Luoshi's. At the same time, Luoshi suppressed her realm to that of a quasi-emperor. An 8 Tribulation Emperor Gu was too dazzling no matter where he was. After all, an 8 Tribulation Emperor Gu was a big shot among the 4 major powers. For example, Emperor Yin, as an 8 Tribulation Emperor Gu, was already the master of a continent. The 3 demon emperors of the ancient monster continent were all 7 Tribulation Emperor Gu. Chu Fengmian didn't need to hide his realm. He was a quasi-emperor. Such a realm was neither low nor high. He was considered a big shot and wouldn't be looked down upon. Where is the closest continent to here? Chu Fengmian asked Luoshi. This was his first time in the sacred land. Long Qianjue had brought him here. Chu Fengmian didn't know anything about the nearby area. The closest continent to here should be the Tiandu continent. It's a level 6 continent. Luoshi took out a jade talisman and injected spiritual energy into it. A star map of the surrounding area appeared. Chapter 1463. There were thousands of continents in the Daluo star field, and most of them were recorded in the star map. The Tiandu continent was one of the level 6 continents. There were hundreds of level 6 continents in the Daluo star field, and most level 6 continents did not have many elites. An 8 Calamity Emperor Gu was already at the peak, and there were only a few 7 Calamity Emperor Gu. If Chu Fengmian and Luoshi went there, no one would be able to discover their identities. Let's go to the Tiandu continent. Let's go. With that, Chu Fengmian grabbed Hanyue Li and turned into a ray of light, flying in the direction of the Tiandu continent. After being attacked one after another, Chu Fengmian understood that his identity was too sensitive, and he could not swagger into the 9 regions. He planned to find an expedition team to the 9 regions. The coordinates of the 9 regions have been exposed, and all the warriors and demon gods in the Daluo star field were going to the 9 regions in search of treasures. However, the 9 regions was once one of the 4 ancient sacred regions. So many warriors and demon gods would go there in groups to reduce the danger. Expedition teams were born in this way. In the sacred dragon secret realm, even many saints who had reached the level of Emperor Gu chose to go there in groups. There should be such expedition teams in every continent. Chu Fengmian planned to join one of the expedition teams and go to the 9 regions with them. This way, no one would be able to detect his whereabouts, and he could return to the 9 regions without anyone noticing, avoiding a lot of trouble. Chu Fengmian changed his figure for this purpose. Chu Fengmian and Luoshi's escape light was extremely fast, and they soon saw a huge continent in front of them. This continent was even bigger than the ancient monster continent. Chu Fengmian and Luoshi's escape light gradually descended, and their speed also slowed down. There was no difference between them and a real quasi-emperor. As the two of them flew forward, they could vaguely see a gigantic city in front of them. This city was even bigger and more prosperous than the imperial capital of the ancient monster continent. At a glance, there were tens of millions of warriors and demon gods in it. The streets were crowded with people and carriages as tall buildings rose from the ground. This was the largest city in the Tiandu continent, the Tiandu city. All the powerhouses of the Tiandu continent were here. At a glance, there were countless warriors and demon gods in the divine power realm and life and death realm. However, there were not many people who had stepped onto the steps of life and death. There were only 1 or 2 out of 10. As for quasi-emperors, there were very few. This was about the strength of the Tiandu continent. Chu Fengmian had no interest in the continent, but he was not interested in the Tiandu continent, of course. Chu Fengmian of Tiandu continent. However, Chu Fengmian wasn't interested. His roots were in the 9 realms, and he would eventually return to them. There was already a Tiandu city gate. All martial artists and fey immortals entering the celestial capital had to be checked before they were allowed to enter. Chu Fengmian observed for a moment and lost interest. He descended from the sky and flew directly to the city gate, ignoring the people lining up to enter the city. Ignoring the rules and directly entering the city? Someone dares to violate the strict rules of the Tiandu city. They don't know the difference between life and death. They will be kicked out in a while. Some of the warriors who were queuing to enter the city saw Chu Fengmian and Luo Shi flying directly to the city gate and started discussing. "Shut up if you don't want to die." Suddenly, an old man shouted angrily. He looked at Chu Fengmian with fear in his eyes. "These two are quasi-emperors. How dare you talk about emperors?" "What? Quasi-emperors? Such young quasi-emperors?" Hearing the old man's words, the warriors who were discussing were dumbfounded. They were terrified and did not dare to speak again. Quasi-emperors. Generally, even immortal realm Wushang old ancestors would not dare to violate the rules of the Tiandu city. After all, the Tiandu city was the most prosperous city in the Tiandu continent. Powerhouses were as common as clouds. Even Wushang old ancestors had to line up obediently and accept the inspection to enter the city. But a quasi-emperor was different. A quasi-emperor was already an emperor realm figure. Such a figure was a big shot in the Tiandu city. Even the soldiers guarding the city did not dare to stop them. They could enter the city without being inspected. Chu Fengmian and Luo Shi's escape light landed in front of the city gate. A few soldiers guarding the city had just approached when they suddenly sensed Chu Fengmian's aura. Their faces changed drastically. "Two emperors, please come in." Saying so, they did not stop Chu Fengmian at all and opened up a path. Chu Fengmian nodded and stepped into the Tiandu city with Luo Shi. Seeing Chu Fengmian enter the city directly without needing to line up, the warriors in the queue all showed looks of envy. This is a quasi-emperor. Once you step into the quasi-emperor realm, you will be an emperor realm master. You will have a high status and can start your own sect. One day, I will also become an emperor realm master. Forget it. It is enough to be an immortal realm Wushang old ancestor. You can go to a big sect and become an elder and get a large salary. Several young warriors were discussing among themselves. A quasi-emperor was already considered a figure in this grade 6 continent. The elders of many forces were also quasi-emperors. Chu Fengmian's realm showed that he was in the quasi-emperor realm, which was more convenient. At least in the Tiandu city, no one dared to stop Chu Fengmian. Strolling in the Tiandu city, Chu Fengmian and Luo Shi observed and noticed some differences between the Tiandu city and the ancient monster continent. The Tiandu continent did not belong to the sacred dragon mystery dimension, but belonged to the Avalon of 5 elements. Therefore, most of the warriors who cultivated the Tao of the 5 elements. The strongest person in the Tiandu continent was the Tiandu Emperor Gu, an 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu. His strength was not far from the Yin Emperor's. But now, the Yin Emperor had a shocking encounter. In addition to the primitive Emperor pill that Chu Fengmian had given him, it was enough for the Yin Emperor to step into the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu's level, leaving the Tiandu Emperor Gu far behind. As for the others, only the 7 Tribulations Emperor Gu were known as the 7 Great Families. There were also some disciples of the Avalon of 5 elements who cultivated in the Tiandu continent and had a high status. Where is the biggest chamber of commerce in the Tiandu city? Chu Fengmian suddenly asked a patrolling guard beside him. Emperor Realm Master. The guard was about to get angry when he was suddenly stopped, but when he saw Chu Fengmian's realm, his expression changed and he hurriedly said, Chapter 1464. At the Tiandu Chamber of Commerce. Chu Fengmian raised his head and looked at the center of Tiandu city. There was a tall building that was several hundred meters tall. The words Tiandu were written on a plaque. That should be where the Tiandu Chamber of Commerce was located. Thank you. Chu Fengmian moved his palm, and a few milky white spirit stones flew toward the guard as a token of appreciation. After saying that, Chu Fengmian walked directly in the direction of the Tiandu Chamber of Commerce. Emperor-grade spirit stones. The guard took the spirit stones and was overjoyed. Emperor-grade spirit stones were extremely precious to him. He raised his head to look for Chu Fengmian's figure, but Chu Fengmian had completely disappeared. Flying was not allowed in Tiandu city. Chu Fengmian and Luo Shi walked slowly in the direction of the Tiandu Chamber of Commerce. Before long, they reached the end of the street. The Tiandu Chamber of Commerce was at the end of the street. The Tiandu Chamber of Commerce was the core of the entire Tiandu city. It was enough to prove its status in Tiandu city. Sirs, please come in. Our Tiandu Chamber of Commerce has everything you need, no matter what kind of business it is. A young man from the Tiandu Chamber of Commerce saw Chu Fengmian and Luo Shi and hurriedly went up to them. This person was only at the divine power realm. He couldn't even tell Chu Fengmian's cultivation level. However, when he saw Chu Fengmian and Luo Shi's temperament, he understood that these two were definitely powerhouses. I have a big business deal with your Tiandu Chamber of Commerce. Ask your manager to come over. Chu Fengmian glanced at the young man. With a move of his palm, a few Emperor-grade spirit stones flew out. These are Emperor-grade spirit stones? The young man was stunned when he saw Chu Fengmian throw out Emperor-grade spirit stones. Such a large sum was very rare in the entire Tiandu continent. Please wait for a moment, sirs. I'll go and ask the supremacy to come over. The young man knew that honored guests had arrived. He put away the Emperor-grade spirit stones and hurried to the backstage. These Emperor-grade spirit stones were equivalent to the wealth he had earned in a few years. It was considered a huge windfall. In just a few minutes, the young man returned. At the same time, a middle-aged man followed behind him. This middle-aged man was an immortal Realm Supreme old ancestor. He was considered an expert in Tiandu City. Obviously, he was the person in charge of the Tiandu Chamber of Commerce. Two quasi-emperors. The middle-aged man was shocked when he saw Chu Fengmian and Luo Shi's realms. In Sky Capital City, it was rare to see a quasi-emperor, let alone two at once. The businesses of quasi-emperors were all big businesses. The middle-aged man quickly reacted and said, "My name is Rong Qing, a venerable from the Tiandu Chamber of Commerce. Venerable sovereigns, please come in." After saying that, Rong Qing made a gesture of invitation. Chu Fengmian nodded and walked in with Luo Shi. Ignoring the countless shocked gazes around them, they went straight upstairs. Who is this person? Let Venerable Rong Qing receive him personally? Look, even Venerable Rong Qing is so respectful. In the Tiandu Chamber of Commerce, other than the mysterious president, there are only a few venerables. Why are they so respectful to this person? Countless complicated gazes looked in Chu Fengmian's direction. There was jealousy, respect, and envy. Amidst these complicated gazes, Chu Fengmian went upstairs and arrived at the second floor. The second floor of the Tiandu Chamber of Commerce was like many other chambers of commerce. There were individual private rooms. Outsiders were not allowed to know about the transactions inside. It was extremely confidential. Rong Qing led Chu Fengmian and Qin Haodong to an extremely spacious box before stopping for a while. The decoration of this private room was extremely luxurious at a glance. It was obviously used to receive distinguished guests. The Tiandu Chamber of Commerce did not do many quasi-emperors' businesses in a year. Seeing Chu Fengmian and Luo Shi arrive this time, Rong Qing naturally received them well. Chu Fengmian and Luo Shi sat down casually in the private room. With their current status, they were important figures even among the four major forces. Of course, there was nothing they were not used to. Rong Qing also sat in front of Chu Fengmian and sealed the door of the private room. I wonder what business the two sovereigns have with our Tiandu Chamber of Commerce. I wonder if your Tiandu Chamber of Commerce has an exploration team heading to the 9 regions. Chu Fengmian did not keep them in suspense and asked directly. Generally, the exploration teams of the Daluo Star Field were established by chambers of commerce. They recruited other cultivators to head to the 9 regions and received a commission for the benefits. Chu Fengmian had come to the Tiandu Chamber of Commerce for this purpose. An exploration team heading to the 9 regions? Rong Qing suddenly changed the topic when he heard this. The two sovereigns are not from our Tiandu continent, right? How so? Chu Fengmian raised his eyebrows and asked curiously. Sovereigns, please don't misunderstand. It's like this. Our Tiandu Chamber of Commerce has indeed established an exploration team heading to the 9 regions. A few days ago, we had already informed the various major clans. The people have already been prepared. It's because of your inquiry that I find it a little strange. Rong Qing smiled and said, Oh, the two of us are indeed not from the Tiandu continent. We are from the Yinzhou continent. Chu Fengmian nodded when he heard this. Since there is an exploration team, let the two of us join. We only need to head to the 9 regions. As for the reward, it's easy to discuss. Chu Fengmian's mind moved, and thousands of spirit stones flew out from his palm. Saint Grade Spirit Stones? Rongqing's expression changed drastically when he saw the countless spirit stones that Chu Fengmian took out. He immediately stood up from his chair. Saint Grade Spirit Stones were extremely rare in the entire Daluo star field. They were of great use to many Emperor Gu. For example, among the sovereigns of the Daluo star field, elixirs from the four major forces were generally used as hard currency. However, Saint Grade Spirit Stones could also be used as hard currency, which was enough to prove their value. In particular, in the Tiandu continent, Saint Grade Spirit Stones had not appeared for decades. Occasionally, they would appear only a few. Now, Chu Fengmian had taken out thousands of Saint Grade Spirit Stones at once. Judging from Chu Fengmian's calm expression, it was obvious that he had more wealth. However, Rongqing frowned when he heard Chu Fengmian's words. He seemed to be thinking about something. What? You think it's too little? Then your Tiandu Chamber of Commerce can name a price. Chu Fengmian looked at Rongqing's expression and said casually. He had plenty of Saint Grade Spirit Stones, so he didn't mind paying a little more. It's not like that. The two of you may not know this, but although our Tiandu Chamber of Commerce has established an exploration team to head to the 9 regions, we haven't been able to obtain the coordinates of the 9 regions. Therefore, we haven't set off after so many days. Rongqing hesitated for a moment before he spoke. Chapter 1465. News of the coordinates of the 9 territories had spread. However, it was only spread among the 4 great forces. As for the forces outside the 4 great forces, they might have heard about the 9 territories, but they might not know where the coordinates of the 9 territories were. The starry sky was vast and boundless. If one didn't know the coordinates and search randomly, they might not find it even after tens of thousands of years. Moreover, the endless stars were incomparably dangerous. Spatial storms would strike from time to time. Even the ancient emperor would find it hard to defend against some of them. For an emperor realm master, traversing the starry sky was an extremely dangerous task, and they needed to rely on external forces. For example, in the ancient monster continent, the disciples of the sacred dragon's secret domain had to rely on the jade talismans refined by the masters of the sacred dragon's secret domain to traverse the starry sky. If one wanted to traverse the starry sky with their physical body, they had to be at least an Emperor Realm Master with 6 Tribulation True Emperor. It was also extremely dangerous. Therefore, the Tiandu Chamber of Commerce had formed the 9 territories exploration team long ago, but they hadn't set off yet because they hadn't found the specific coordinates of the 9 territories. The coordinates of the 9 territories. Chu Fengmian's eyes flickered after hearing Rongqing's words. No one knew the coordinates of the 9 territories better than Chu Fengmian. I can provide the coordinates of the 9 territories. Chu Fengmian suddenly said to Rongqing. The coordinates of the 9 territories were no longer a secret in the Daluo star field. At least, almost everyone in the 4 great forces knew about it. However, the Tiandu continent was only a 6th-class continent after all, and there were relatively few masters there. If there were some 5th-class or 4th-class continents, it wouldn't be difficult for them to obtain the coordinates of the 9 territories. What? You have the coordinates of the 9 territories? Rongqing stood up from his chair when he heard Chu Fengmian's words. His face was full of disbelief. The Tiandu Chamber of Commerce had spent a lot of effort but still couldn't obtain the coordinates of the 9 territories. Now, Chu Fengmian said he had it. Yes, the two of us have been following Emperor Yin and have heard about the 9 territories. That's why we want to go there. Chu Fengmian nodded and didn't want to say anything more. What if I can provide the coordinates of the 9 territories? Can the exploration team set off now? The exploration team can set off with the coordinates, but this matter is of great importance. Please wait. Rongqing left the room in a hurry. The matter of the 9 regions' coordinates was a huge matter for the Tiandu Chamber of Commerce. This was no longer something he could decide. Soon, Rongqing came back with a middle-aged man. The middle-aged man looked very dignified. Even Rongqing had to treat him with respect. A 6th Tribulation True Emperor Chu Fengmian saw the middle-aged man's strength with a single glance. A 6th Tribulation True Emperor was considered an expert in celestial capital. After all, ancient emperors were the ancestors of the continent. G of the Emperor 9 territories. Emperor Ji Li of nine territories. Of Emperor of the Sky of the 9 of them. How much are the 2 of you willing to pay? Oh, one of them. Chu Fengmian sat on the chair and said casually, "Join the exploration team? Go to the 9 territories?" Ji Yin didn't expect Chu Fengmian to make such a request. He thought for a moment and said, "We can accept this request. However, our expedition team can only send you to the 9 territories. We won't be responsible for anything after that." The 9 territories had countless treasures, but according to rumors, the 9 territories was also a very dangerous place. Experts from various factions would swarm into the 9 territories. The 9 territories were filled with all kinds of people. Even Emperor Gu might not be able to escape unscathed. The Tiandu Chamber of Commerce couldn't guarantee the safety of Chu Fengmian and Emperor Li. We just need to go to the 9 territories. The rest has nothing to do with the Tiandu Chamber of Commerce. Chu Fengmian said, "How about it? These are the 9 territories' coordinates. I need to set off as soon as possible." Chu Fengmian flipped his palm and a jade talisman appeared. This jade talisman was a star chart. It recorded the route from the Tiandu continent to the 9 territories. "All right, but I heard that you 2 are warriors from the Yinzhou continent. The Yinzhou continent is very far away from the Tiandu continent. I wonder how you 2 came to the Tiandu continent?" Ji Li's eyes suddenly flickered as he looked at Chu Fengmian with suspicion. "Of course, I'm not doubting your identities. It's just that the Tiandu Chamber of Commerce's rules state that you have to verify your identity before joining the expedition team. Otherwise, I'm afraid there will be trouble on the way." Verification of identity? How about this? Chu Fengmian thought for a moment. Suddenly, a wooden token appeared in his hand. The words Emperor Yin were engraved on the wooden token. There was also a unique spiritual power added to it. This spiritual power could only be added by the Emperor Yin. This wooden token was given to Chu Fengmian by the Emperor Yin before he left. He said that if Chu Fengmian went to the Yinzhou continent, this wooden token would be enough to prove his identity. He didn't expect it to come in handy here. Emperor Yan's token? Ji Li was shocked when he saw the wooden token. "I didn't expect the 2 of you to be so valued by the Emperor Yin. It seems that I was overthinking. Please take a rest. I'll inform the others. We'll set off for the 9 territories in 2 hours." "Okay." Chu Fengmian nodded. Although he didn't know what the Emperor Yan's token was, it seemed that he had gotten away with it. Ji Li and Rong Qing retreated and left the 2 of them. They walked up to the 3rd floor. "Vice President, don't we have to verify the identities of the members of the 9 territories expedition team? Why didn't you find out who the 2 of them are? Why did you let them join just like that?" Rong Qing asked doubtfully. He had wanted to ask about Chu Fengmian's identity, but Ji Li had agreed. "There's no need to ask. The 2 of them have the Emperor Yan's token. I'm afraid that even if they're not the Emperor's descendants, they're his most valued disciples. We don't have to provoke them." Ji Li reprimanded coldly. "Are you confused? Don't you know about such a big thing recently? Are you talking about the Emperor Yin entering the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu?" Chapter 1466. That's right. This matter has already spread throughout the Daluotian star field. Although the Yinzhou continent and our Tiandu continent are both 6th-grade continents, once Emperor Yin steps into the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu, it will be a real big shot. Ji Yin said coldly. Only the favored people of Emperor Yin or his most valued disciples are qualified to have the Emperor Yan's token. Looking at their cultivation, it's very likely that they are Emperor Yan's disciples. What's the point of provoking them? Since the coordinates of the 9 regions have been obtained, let's hurry and inform the others. We'll set off in 2 hours. Yes. Rong Qing hurriedly nodded and left to contact the other powerhouses. Emperor Yin has already stepped into the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu. Chu Fengmian sat in the room. The entire Tiandu Chamber of Commerce was under the control of his spiritual sense. He heard the entire conversation between Ji Yin and Rong Qing. There weren't many 9 tribulations Emperor Gu in the 4 major forces. They were all old antiques and ancestors. Moreover, Emperor Yin had always been a lone wolf. Being able to step into the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu was indeed enough to cause a sensation. If the four major forces' attitude toward Emperor Yin when he was in 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu was to rope him in, then they were probably trying to curry favor with him now. With Emperor Yin around, even if Qing Ming hadn't stepped into the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu, the Holy Dragon sect wouldn't have to worry for a short period of time. Chu Fengmian could also head to the 9 regions with peace of mind. 2 hours passed quickly. Vice President Ji Yin pushed the door open and walked in. After seeing the Emperor Yan's token, Ji Yin went to receive Chu Fengmian and Luo Shi. The members of the other exploration teams have already gathered. Please follow me, Ji Yin said and walked out of the door. Chu Fengmian and Luo Shi followed closely behind. They left the Tiandu Chamber of Commerce and stepped into a transportation array. How should I address you, young master? Ji Yin suddenly turned his head and asked Chu Fengmian. My surname is Chu. Chu Fengmian didn't say much to avoid exposing his identity. Chu Fengmian was no longer a nobody in the Dalyu Ocean Star field. Ever since Chu Fengmian had joined the Holy Dragon sect, his name had been known by many people in the Dalyu Ocean Star field. Of course, just the surname Chu wasn't a big deal. In the entire Dalyu Star field, there were at least tens of millions of people with the surname Chu. Young Master Chu, please. Seeing that Chu Fengmian was unwilling to say more, Ji Yin smiled and didn't say anything. He stepped into the transportation array. Chu Fengmian and Luo Shi. Chu Fengmian and Luo Shi. As the world spun, Chu Fengmian sensed that he had arrived at another place in the Tiandu continent. It was a desert, and there were a few figures standing in the middle of it. These are the experts of our Tiandu mainland. These two are Gu Yin and Gu Hongfang from the Gu family. And Clan Wunli. Both of them were 6 Tribulation true emperors. This is Yang Yuanbai. He's also from the celestial capital. He's an inner disciple of the Avalon of 5 elements. Ji Yin pointed at a young man and said, Yang Yuanbai was a 5 Tribulation true emperor despite his young age. He didn't hide the power of the 5 spirits from his body. His face was full of arrogance. Joining one of the 4 great powers in the celestial capital was a supreme honor. Chu Fengmian casually glanced at him. After all, he had killed plenty of supreme elders in the Avalon of 5 elements. A disciple wasn't worthy of his attention. As for this one, she's a disciple of the Blue Ocean Capital. We didn't check her identity, but we know that she's a disciple from the Blue Ocean Capital. Ji Yin pointed at the last figure and said, It was a woman who looked incomparably mysterious. Her face was covered with a veil, making it impossible for others to see through her. This veil was definitely a spirit treasure. It might even be a heaven-grade spirit treasure. Chu Fengmian's vision was enough to see through everything. Even the 7 Tribulation Emperor Gu's trump cards could be seen with a single glance. There were no secrets in Chu Fengmian's eyes. However, Chu Fengmian couldn't see through the veil. Clearly, she had an extraordinary origin. The 9 Realms exploration team of the Tiandu Chamber of Commerce originally only had 4 people. Now that the 2 of you have joined, there's a total of 6. Ji Yin smiled and said, Vice President Ji Yin, we've been waiting for half a day. When are we leaving? What about the coordinates of the 9 realms? Why haven't you told us? While Ji Yin and Chu Fengmian were talking, the figures in the distance also saw Chu Fengmian. Among them, Yang Yuanbai said impatiently, Young noble Yang, don't worry. We'll leave now, Ji Yin hurriedly said. Although his cultivation realm was higher than Yang Yuanbai's, he didn't dare to reprimand Yang Yuanbai. After all, Yang Yuanbai was a disciple of the 4 major forces. With the status of the 4 major forces, there was a great chance that they could step into the ranks of Emperor Gu. Therefore, he couldn't offend them. As for the coordinates of the 9 realms, this is young noble Chu. He knows the coordinates of the 9 realms. This time, young noble Chu and his companion will follow the exploration team to the 9 realms. Ji Yin introduced to Chu Fengmian. What? Someone else is joining? Hearing Ji Yin's words, Yang Yuanbai glanced at Chu Fengmian and his companion. He sized up Chu Fengmian's cultivation realm and said disdainfully, 2 quasi-emperors? Why would they join us? Are they dragging us down? The 9 realms are a dangerous place. What's the point of bringing 2 burdens? Moreover, the journey is dangerous. We can't bring unknown people. Vice President Ji Yin, I think it's fine to bring them along. Just ask them to hand over the coordinates of the 9 realms. At most, I'll pay them. Young Noble Chu and his companion are both from the Yinzhou continent. Our exploration team has already checked their identities. Young Noble Yang, you can rest assured. Ji Yin hurriedly said when he heard Yang Yuanbai's words. Yinzhou continent? And here I was wondering where they came from. What qualifications does a mere quasi-emperor from a level 6 continent have to follow us to the 9 realms? Hearing Ji Yin's words, Yang Yuanbai was even more impatient. This time, he looked directly at Chu Fengyan and said coldly, Young Noble Chu, be sensible and hand over the coordinates of the 9 realms. What do you want in return? Spiritual weapons? Elixirs? I'll give it to you. Yang Yuanbai stared at Chu Fengyan with disdain in his eyes. Chapter 1467. Apart from Chu Fengyan and Luo Yin, Yang Yuanbai, the 2 from the Gu clan, and the mysterious woman were all at least 5 tribulation true emperors. Only Chu Fengyan and Luo Yin were at the quasi-emperor realm. There was indeed a gap between their realms. After all, the difference between true emperors was like heaven and earth. The core disciples of the 4 great powers could easily surpass the gap between realms. However, for the majority of true emperors, the gap between realms was the difference in strength. Moreover, Chu Fengyan and Luo Yin were only at the quasi-emperor realm. Yang Yuanbai looked down on them from the bottom of his heart. Young Noble Yang, hearing this, Ji Yin's face revealed a somewhat awkward expression. He knew that Chu Fengyan wanted Luo Shi and Chu Fengyan to follow the expedition to the 9 realms. He didn't expect to encounter such a great resistance. Brat, I'm talking to you. Are you deaf? Hand over the coordinates of the 9 realms, and I'll give you half of the treasures I get there. How about it? Yang Yuanbai stared at Chu Fengyan and said coldly, as if he was giving alms. The coordinates of the 9 realms are not for sale. Chu Fengyan said indifferently, ignoring Yang Yuanbai's words. Brat, it seems like you won't give me face. Yang Yuanbai sneered and looked at Chu Fengyan. A mere quasi-emperor dares to not give me face? Not for sale? Then it's for free? If that's the case, then hand it over. Boom! A wave of spirit energy emitted from Yang Yuanbai's body. His right hand made a grabbing motion and aimed at Chu Fengyan's throat. 5 elemental spirit energy immediately exuded from Yang Yuanbai's body. His fingers turned into 5 elemental lights and bombarded Chu Fengyan. It was an absolute killing move. Young Noble Yang, please stop. Ji Yin was shocked to see this scene. He knew that Chu Fengyan had the Yin King's token and was most likely the Yin King's most valued disciple. If he died here today, it would be difficult to explain. Ji Yin, you dare to interfere in my business? Yang Yuanbai's expression turned cold as he looked at Chu Fengyan. Brat, since you don't intend to hand over the coordinates of the 9 zones, then you can die. I'll kill you and refine your soul. Let's see if you can still be so stubborn. 5 rays of light bombarded Chu Fengyan. A disciple of the Avalon of 5 elements? What was a mere inner disciple to him? Do you think you're Emperor Gu? Chu Fengyan looked at the approaching 5 rays of light. Not only did he not retreat, he even revealed a disdainful smile. Destroy. Boom! A powerful aura burst out from Chu Fengyan's back. As soon as this aura was released, the surrounding spiritual energy was completely destroyed. The moment the 5 rays of light approached Chu Fengyan, they were all destroyed. Not a single ray could get close to Chu Fengyan's body. In Emperor's Jade Cannon, the other true emperors were surprised to see Chu Fengyan's aura. This is the Yin Emperor's ultimate skill. It is said that even among the Yin Emperor's disciples, there are very few who can learn this Yin Emperor's Jade Scripture. This person is only a quasi-emperor. How can he learn it? It seems that this person is most likely a disciple highly regarded by the Yin Emperor. No wonder he's not afraid of Yang Yuanbai. They talked for a while and found that Chu Fengyan wasn't as simple as they thought. Now, Chu Fengyan easily dispelled Yang Yuanbai's attack. With your strength, you dare to boast like this? Chu Fengyan looked at Yang Yuanbai with disdain. Little animal. Yang Yuanbai saw Chu Fengyan's expression and became extremely angry. He erupted with spiritual energy and the power of the 5 elements crazily condensed behind him. He wanted to use an even more powerful move to kill Chu Fengmian. Stop. At this moment, an ice wall suddenly appeared between Chu Fengmian and Yang Yuanbai. The woman surnamed Lan suddenly took action. Seeing her take action, Ji Yin breathed a sigh of relief and hurriedly came forward. Young Master Yang, young Master Chu, let's not fight here. We still have to work together in the future. Young Master Yang, you've seen young Master Chu's strength now. It shouldn't be a problem for him to join the exploration team. Ji Yin was also amazed by Chu Fengmian's strength. It wasn't easy for a quasi-emperor to dispel Yang Yuanbai's attack. After all, the difference in realm was too great. But now, Chu Fengmian took action and looked very relaxed. It was obvious that Chu Fengmian's strength wasn't limited to this. It wouldn't be good for anyone to continue fighting. Humph! Yang Yuanbai snorted coldly and slowly withdrew his spiritual energy. Indeed, his purpose was to go to the 9 regions to collect treasures. The current Chu Fengmian was no longer an ant that could be easily crushed in his eyes. Even if he wanted to kill Chu Fengmian, he would need to consume a lot of spiritual energy. The loss outweighed the gain. Boy, I'll remember you. I'll come and compete with you in the future. Yang Yuanbai said to Chu Fengmian and turned his head, ignoring Chu Fengmian. The other 2 from the Gu clan and the girl surnamed Lan no longer looked at Chu Fengmian with disdain. Although they didn't think that Chu Fengmian's true strength was comparable to Yang Yuanbai, he wasn't a weakling since he could exchange a few blows with Yang Yuanbai. After all, Chu Fengmian only wanted to form a team with them, not to split the treasures. Thus, it wasn't hard to accept. If there's no objection, then we can go now. The girl surnamed Lan calmly said. Let's go. The 2 people from the Gu clan also nodded their heads. The old man from the Gu clan, Gu Yin, moved his hand and an empty ring appeared in his palm. He poured his spiritual energy into it and opened it to reveal a 100-meter-long arc. Crossing the stars was an extremely dangerous matter for a 6th tribulation true emperor. It was fine if the journey was short, but if it was longer, then even Emperor Gu would be in danger. After all, there were many secrets and dangers in space that were impossible to guard against. An arc was enough to make it much safer. This arc was at least a heaven-level spirit treasure. It seemed like the 2 from the Gu clan were well prepared. The 2 from the Gu family took the lead and stepped onto the arc. Activating their spiritual energy, the arrays that were engraved on the arc were immediately activated. Yang Yuanbai also looked at Chu Fengmian with hatred in his eyes. Then, he also stepped onto the arc. Chapter 1468. The ark left the celestial capital continent and traveled through space. The 2 true emperors of the Gu clan were in charge of controlling the ark. As for Chu Fengmian and the rest, they were meditating inside. Chu Fengmian had carved the location of the 9 regions on a jade talisman and handed it to the 2 true emperors of the Gu clan. Then, Chu Fengmian and Luo Shi meditated inside the ark. Chu Fengmian sat on the edge of the ark with his eyes closed. He seemed to be cultivating, but his eyes were actually sizing up the people present. Brother Chu is quite strong. You must be a disciple of the Yin Emperor, right? He even passed down the Yin Emperor's jade scripture to you. A young man walked to Chu Fengmian's side. It was the younger of the 2 true emperors of the Gu clan, Gu Hongfang. He immediately came to strike up a conversation with Chu Fengmian. With Brother Chu's strength, you shouldn't be a nobody in the Daluo star field. You should be able to rank in the top 100 of the Daluo genius ranking. Gu Hongfang said with a smile. But I've never heard of you before. I've been cultivating in seclusion with my master all year round. This is the first time I've come out to experience the world. I'm heading to the 9 regions to find some treasures so that I can break through to the Emperor realm. Chu Fengmian said indifferently. His face also revealed a somewhat dull feeling. He indeed looked like a warrior who had not experienced much of the world and had just started cultivating. Only cultivators who had shown their strength were qualified to be on the Daluo genius ranking. For example, in the Holy Land of the Holy Dragon's secret realm, there were many saint children who could enter the top 10 or at least the top 100. However, they weren't on the ranking because most of them were cultivating in the Holy Land and the outside world didn't know about them. The Holy Dragon's secret realm was the same as the other forces in the Daluo star field. There were many hidden geniuses, and many of them were able to rank among the top the first time they entered the ranking. Now that Chu Fengmian had the Yin Emperor's Jade Scripture as a cover, no one could question his identity. He could say whatever he wanted. The Yin Emperor has recently stepped into the Nine Tribulations Emperor Gu. As the Yin Emperor's disciple, Brother Chu will have a meteoric rise. We will have to rely on you in the future. Gu Hongfang's attitude was very polite. He chatted with Chu Fengmian for a while before leaving with a smile. Something's off. Luo Shi, who was beside Chu Fengmian, waited until Gu Hongfang left before she suddenly transmitted her voice to Chu Fengmian. She didn't say anything, but she was observing Gu Hongfang, who was conversing with Chu Fengmian. The two emperors from the Gu clan looked no different from ordinary people. However, Luo Shi was an A-tribulation ancient emperor. She could see through everything. He could tell that there was something strange about these two emperors. There was an indescribable power inside them. This was definitely not the power of a human warrior. It's not a warrior. It should be a demon. Chu Fengmian glanced at the two emperors and said coldly. Luo Shi didn't recognize the power of the two emperors, but Chu Fengmian recognized it as the power of the devil race. After all, Chu Fengmian had gone to the Nether Ghost realm and killed a lot of demons. Chu Fengmian even had a heart demon king at the level of Emperor Gu. Chu Fengmian couldn't be more familiar with the aura of the devil race. Interesting. There are actually demons that have infiltrated the cultivators. They want to go to the 9 realms as well. Chu Fengmian saw through the identities of these two people, and a strange look appeared in his eyes. The enmity between the demon race and human martial artists had always been irreconcilable. For example, when the disciples of the 4 major factions went to the ancient demon domain to slay the demon race during their assessment. Similarly, after a period of time, a large number of demons would also attack the various continents, slaughtering the martial artists and demon immortals, devouring their flesh and blood to obtain power. For example, these two emperors from the Gu clan were devils. Moreover, Chu Fengmian could see that they were at least at the Emperor Gu level. Chu Fengmian was a little surprised that these two ancient emperor-level demons had joined the martial artists and even infiltrated the 9 regions exploration team. He didn't know what these two were up to. Should we kill them? Luo Shi's eyes flashed with ferocity. She couldn't be merciful against the devils. The only way was to kill them. Wait, I don't think they're here for us. They're on this ark. Chu Fengmian's eyes flickered as he sized up the people on the ark. Apart from Chu Fengmian and Luo Shi, there was only Yang Yuanbai and the mysterious woman surnamed Lan. Chu Fengmian had fought with Yang Yuanbai before. Yang Yuanbai was an ordinary inner disciple of the Avalon of 5 elements and wasn't considered a big shot. He definitely wasn't worthy of 2 Emperor Gu-level demons to deal with them. In that case, if the target of those 2 people was not Chu Fengmian and Chu Feng, then the only possibility was that woman surnamed Lan. This woman with the surname Lan was extremely mysterious. Even Chu Fengmian couldn't tell where she was from. It seemed like these 2 ancient Emperor-level demons were here for her. Wu Ji, do you want to make a move now? No. This is the territory of the Avalon of 5 elements. If we make a move here, we'll alert them. Let's wait until we're near the 9 domains. Black Sky Devil Emperor has already gone to the 9 domains and occupied an area. Once we're near the 9 domains, we can ask Black Sky Devil Emperor to come and receive us. Wu Shi, don't test that kid anymore. He's a dead man anyway. Once we're in the 9 domains, we'll bring back that woman and present her to the young emperor. As for the rest, we'll kill them all. Chu Fengmian quietly activated his spiritual consciousness and secretly eavesdropped on the conversation between the 2 Emperor Gu's devils. Chu Fengmian heard all of their conversation. These 2 devils of the Emperor Gu were called Wu Ji and Wu Shi. They seemed to be from the same family. In the devil race, bloodline was more important. A powerful devil bloodline would give birth to an incomparably powerful devil. Therefore, each and every big family was like a power in the devil race. The Raven tribe was one of the big families in the devil race. The devil race has already infiltrated the 9 domains. This is troublesome. Furthermore, it's a demon emperor. After listening to their conversation, Chu Fengmian's eyes became hazy. During the dark age of the 9 domains, the 6 Paths demon sect had ruled over the 9 domains. It was said that the Six Paths demon sect had the support of countless powerful devils, making them invincible. Chapter 1469. In that era, the demons that went to the 9 territories were just a branch of a family. Therefore, they were destroyed by the combined forces of the 9 territories. For tens of thousands of years, the demons never appeared in the 9 territories again. However, it was different this time. The coordinates of the 9 territories were exposed. Just the demons of the nether ghost realm alone were enough to cause great suffering in the 9 territories, let alone outside the Daluotian star field. Some powerful demons even occupied a star field. If all of them came, it would be unimaginable. Who is this girl? The 2 ancient emperors of the demon race are really here for her, and even mentioned the young empress? Chu Fengmian looked at the mysterious woman surnamed Lan with a hint of surprise in his eyes. Chu Fengmian was only guessing, but after hearing the conversation between the 2 Emperor Gu of the demon race, Chu Fengmian confirmed it. The 2 Emperor Gu of the demon race did not come for Chu Fengmian and Luo Shi. Chu Fengmian and Luo Shi's arrival was just an accident. Their target had always been the mysterious woman surnamed Lan, and it sounded like the young emperor had given the order. The young emperor had a high status in the demon race of the Nether Ghost realm. After Chu Fengmian returned to the Sacred Dragon's secret realm, he did some research on the young emperor. After all, Chu Fengmian had snatched the 10 heavenly demon skeletons from the young emperor. It was also because Chu Fengmian had cultivated a half-step immortal real body. Because of this, Chu Fengmian and the young emperor had formed an irreconcilable enmity. The young emperor's status in the Nether Ghost realm was almost the same as Yun Zun's in the Daluotian star field. He was the number 1 person of the younger generation, an invincible existence. It was said that the young emperor had reached the half-step celestial realm. Previously, in the Nether Ghost realm, the young emperor's clone formed by a wisp of spiritual power was enough to kill several Emperor Gu. If not for the fact that the young emperor's power was almost exhausted when he was chasing after Chu Fengmian would not have escaped death. The woman surnamed Lan must be hiding a big secret since she was able to make an expert half a step into the celestial being realm so concerned. Therefore, Chu Fengmian did not plan to deal with the 2 Emperor Gu. Instead, he waited for them to attack and see what was going on. Time passed little by little. The 2 ancient emperors of the demon race did not come to talk to Chu Fengmian again. They had never taken Chu Fengmian and Luo Yunyang seriously. From their point of view, Chu Fengmian and Luo Shi were already dead, so they didn't care. As for the woman with the surname Lan, she had been cultivating in a corner. Even Chu Fengmian could not see through her cultivation technique. Although Luo Yang, Chu Fengmian knew the Yin Emperor's Jade Cannon because he'd seen the Yin Emperor use it when he'd joined forces with him in the 9 mystic immortal sovereigns' abode. Now, Chu Fengmian could easily use it, but its power was less than 30% of the real Yin Emperor's. Still, it was enough to bluff his way through. However, Chu Fengmian could not see through Lan Fengmian's cultivation method. This was enough to prove how mysterious it was. A week passed quickly. The Tiandu continent was about a week's journey from the 9 realms. During this week, Chu Fengmian spent all his time observing the situation of the 2 Emperor Gu and cultivating in seclusion. This period of time was the last chance for him to properly cultivate. Once he reached the 9 realms, there would be no more peaceful days. When he'd fought little Emperor Yi, Chu Fengmian had used the 4th move of the 9 mystic sword art, Heavenly Secrets. It was this move that had forced little Emperor Yi to retreat, but he'd managed to escape unscathed. Even Chu Fengmian hadn't fully comprehended the profundity of this move. After his battle with little Emperor Yi, Chu Fengmian had been constantly trying to comprehend it. In the past week, Chu Fengmian had been trying to comprehend this sword. If Chu Fengmian were to fight little Emperor Yi again, he had at least a 30% chance of killing him on the spot without giving him a chance to escape. The 9 realms were almost there. Chu Fengmian slowly opened his eyes and looked at the star chart in the Jade Talisman. They were now incomparably close to the 9 realms. Luo Shi, the woman with the surname Lan, and the others slowly opened their eyes and looked out of the ark. What entered their eyes was an incomparably large continent. However, This continent was obscured by dense fog. It was impossible to see what was going on inside from the outside. All they could see was a large expanse of fog. Amidst the thick fog, one could vaguely see balls of fire. This is the Nine Realms? Chu Fengyan was from the Nine Realms, but this was his first time seeing the Nine Realms. The last time Chu Fengyan had left the Nine Realms, he coincidentally opened a spatial rift and drifted through the spatial current to the ancient monster continent. This was the first time Chu Fengyan had seen the Nine Realms in the outside world. It was just as the rumors said. The ninefold skyfire hovered above the Nine Realms. This ninefold skyfire had once been the umbrella that protected the Nine Realms from invasion. However, later on, the ninefold skyfire had also become a cage for the Nine Realms. For tens of thousands of years, almost no powerhouse had been able to break out of the ninefold skyfire and leave the Nine Realms. This is the Nine Realms? What a small continent. The Nine Realms, which used to be one of the four sacred realms, is only this big? No, the Nine Realms used to be tens of thousands of times bigger than this. However, in a catastrophe, the Nine Realms were destroyed and only this big is left. However, don't underestimate the Nine Realms. There are treasures everywhere in the Nine Realms, and there are also countless small realms left behind. The woman surnamed Lan, the two demon emperor Gu, Luo Shi, and the others all exclaimed. For them, this was their first time seeing the Nine Realms in its entirety. Seeing the Nine Realms, which used to be one of the four sacred realms, right before their eyes, everyone's eyes revealed undisguised greed. Treasures. Many powerhouses had come to the Nine Realms only for treasures. They had come for treasures. Chu Fengyan didn't pay attention to these people's conversations. His gaze was fixed on the Nine Realms. The power of the ninefold skyfire? Has it become smaller? Chu Fengyan observed the ninefold skyfire above the Nine Realms, and his eyes revealed some indelible surprise. Ninefold skyfire. In the countless ancient records of the Nine Realms, it was an extremely terrifying existence. Chapter 1470. Becoming an immortal was the celestial realm in the Daluo star field. Stepping into the celestial realm was also known as ascending to immortality, stepping into the immortal realm and surpassing mortals. According to the ancient records, only celestials had the ability to break through the ninefold heavenly flame. Therefore, for thousands of years, only the celestial sovereigns left the nine domains and went to the outer space. The other true emperors and Emperor Gu couldn't leave the nine domains. But now, the ninefold heavenly flame had weakened. Chu Fengyan glanced over and saw that even Emperor Gu couldn't resist the ninefold heavenly flame. Even some powerful six tribulation true emperors and quasi-emperors with external help could break through the ninefold heavenly flame and enter the nine domains. It seemed that something big had happened in the nine domains while Chu Fengyan wasn't in the nine domains. Everyone, we're going to break through the ninefold heavenly flame and enter the nine domains. One of the true emperors of the Gu clan, Gu Hongfeng, who was also Emperor Gu of the devil race, shouted loudly. He began to control the ark and flew towards the nine domains, passing through the ninefold heavenly flame. Lady Lan and Yang Yuanbai looked solemn. Obviously, they had heard of the power of the ninefold heavenly flame and didn't dare to underestimate it. They began to condense their spiritual energy and formed a barrier on the ark to resist the ninefold heavenly flame. Chu Fengyan and Luo Shi also injected their spiritual energy and didn't show any difference from the others. After the formation of the spiritual energy barrier was completed, the ark flew towards the nine domains. Countless heavenly flames burned the ark, but they were all neutralized by the spiritual energy barrier on the ark. After passing through the layers of heavenly flames, the ninefold heavenly flame finally disappeared. The fog that covered the nine domains also disappeared and was replaced by the full view of the nine domains. The nine domains and the four seas were all reflected in Chu Fengyan's eyes. We're back to the nine domains. Chu Fengyan and Luo Shi were excited. After all, the two of them grew up in the nine domains and had a special feeling for the nine domains. Even though the two of them were Shengzi in the sacred dragon secret dimension and had an extremely high status, they were still most focused on returning to the nine regions. The place we are heading to is the Yin region, one of the nine regions. An elder from our Gu clan has already established a faction there. We can meet up with him first. Demon Emperor Gu Wuji, who had turned into Gu Hongfang, shouted loudly. He commanded the ark to fly directly in the direction of the flame domain. The 9 domains doesn't seem to have changed much, but there are undercurrents. I'm afraid that many of the forces have been infiltrated and controlled by other experts. Chu Fengmian looked at the 9 regions with a calm expression. However, he knew very well that all of this was just on the surface. So many powerhouses had no intention of making a move before they figured out the actual situation of the 9 zones. However, once they understood the situation of the 9 regions, it would be time for them to make their move. Chu Fengmian and Luo Shi hadn't returned too late. They had managed to return before they made their move. Han Yueli had returned earlier than Chu Fengmian and Luo Shi. When Chu Fengmian had returned to the 9 regions, she had also sensed Han Yueli's aura. This direction was indeed in the north region, Wusheng Nation. It seemed like they had returned to the cold snow pavilion. Chu Fengmian had followed the 2 Demon Emperor Gu and hadn't left yet. He wanted to see what the Demon Clan was up to. The 9 regions weren't large. Given the ark's flying speed, they soon arrived in the Yin region. They landed in a sect. This sect was called the Thunderfire Sect. It was a second-rate faction in the Yin region. Chu Fengmian had only heard of it before. The ark landed in the Thunderfire Sect. Immediately, countless streaks of light flew over. A martialist wearing the Thunderfire Sect's disciple robes walked out. In the center of this group of Thunderfire Sect disciples stood a few elders. Among them was a middle-aged man who was extremely handsome and tall. He exuded Emperor Gu's aura. Emperor Gu, this is an expert from the Gu family? An Emperor Gu? Yang Yuanbai was extremely shocked when he saw the middle-aged man. As for Chu Fengmian, Han Yueli, and the lady in blue, they didn't think much of it. However, they still pretended to be shocked. At the same time, Chu Fengmian could tell that the middle-aged man before him was also a demon. He was an 8th Tribulation Emperor Gu. He should be the Black Sky Demon Emperor that the 2 of them had mentioned. As for the other Thunder Fire Sect disciples, Chu Fengmian's heart sank when he saw them. These Thunder Fire Sect disciples, without exception, were all from the demon race. They were all demons in disguise. It seemed like this group of demons knew a type of disguise technique that allowed them to disguise themselves as martialists. Apart from Chu Fengmian, who possessed the Heart Demon King, which made him extremely sensitive to the aura of demons, even an 8th Tribulation Emperor Gu like Luo, she wouldn't be able to tell the true identity of this group of people. A large group of demons had occupied the Thunderfire Sect. Now, the Thunderfire Sect had become a nest of the demons. It was likely that the original disciples and elders of the Thunderfire Sect had died in the hands of this group of demons. Now, the 9 regions have been infiltrated without anyone noticing. If the demons could infiltrate, then what about the experts of the 4 major forces? What about the experts of the Daluo Star Field? Chu Fengmian didn't dare to imagine how many experts had infiltrated the 9 regions. Greetings, my lord. The 2 ancient emperors of the demon race, who had turned into Gu Yin and Gu Hongfang, lowered their heads respectfully when they saw the middle-aged man. The difference in strength between the demons was the difference in status. When facing an expert, they had to be respectful. You guys have done well. The Black Sky Demon Emperor glanced around. When he saw the woman with the surname Lan, a hint of greed flashed in his eyes. The woman with the surname Lan couldn't help but frown when she noticed it. Since we have already arrived in the 9 regions, then the exploration team will be dismissed. I have friends in the 9 regions, so I will take my leave first. The woman with the surname Lan sensed that something was wrong. After she finished speaking, she turned into a streak of light and intended to leave. But at this moment, the spiritual energy in the sky suddenly condensed and turned into a large array. Everyone was sealed inside, and no one was able to break out. Miss Lan, you don't have to be in a hurry to leave. My young master still wants to meet you. This is an order from my young master, so I can only obey. Don't resist, the Black Sky Demon Emperor said as he looked at the woman with the surname Lan. Chapter 1471. Yes. The 2 Emperor Gu of the Devil race who had turned into true emperors of the Gu clan laughed ferociously. Woo 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 woo. Immediately, Ghostly wails and howls resounded in the Thunderfire sect. Demonic intent filled the sky and enveloped the entire Thunderfire sect. How was this a sect of the Nine Zones? This was practically a den of demons. The disciples of the Thunderfire sect burst out laughing as well. Suddenly, their bodies began to morph into figures of the demon race. Azura, Yiksha, fiery devil. Seeing the disciples of the Thunderfire sect turn into devils, Ladyland's face turned gloomy to the extreme. At the same time, the two true emperors of the Gu clan also turned into Yaksha kings with the strength of 7 tribulations Emperor Gu. Are you from the devil race? The woman surnamed Lan said coldly. This is the Daluo star domain. How dare you act so presumptuously? Ha ha. So what if this is the Daluo star domain? We, the devil race, have never been afraid of anything. The Black Sky Devil Emperor laughed out loud. Princess of the Sea, you don't have to waste any more time. No one can save you today. The ancient emperor of the demon race, called Wu Ji, stared at the woman with the surname Lan with a sinister smile. Princess of the Sea? Hearing this name, Chu Fumian's eyes flickered as he looked at Lady Lan. Chu Fumian had heard of this name before. Even though Chu Fumian had never met the Princess of the Sea in Sky Horn City, they had competed for her at the auction house. This Lady Lan in front of him was the Princess of the Sea from Blue Ocean Capital. No wonder so many experts from the devil race were involved. This Lady Lan's background was indeed extraordinary. The Princess of the Sea was one of the most famous geniuses in Blue Ocean Capital. Her strength was at the peak of 6 tribulations true emperor when she was a quasi-emperor. Now, the Princess of the Sea seemed to have had a fortuitous encounter. Although she was still a quasi-emperor, her strength was comparable to Emperor Gu. Even among the saints in the Holy Dragon Secret Dimension, such talent was considered extremely high. The few of you should be dead by now, since you know our secret. However, I will give you a chance today. Kneel down and become our slaves. After we conquer the 9 regions, you will be rewarded handsomely. Now, kneel down and submit, and drink the demonic blood. The Black Sky Devil Emperor sneered at Yang Yuan Bai, Chu Fengmian, and the others. It's your honor to submit to us, the great demon race, you little fellows. Kneel down and submit. If you don't submit, then die. Wu Ji and Wu Shi both took a step forward, their faces ferocious. As long as the order was given, they would kill. Submit to the demons? Dream on. The Princess of the Sea's face was extremely gloomy. Just as she was about to unleash her spiritual energy, the 2 demons from Emperor Gu were even faster. A wave of demonic intent instantly enveloped the Princess of the Sea, causing her spiritual energy to dissipate. I submit. I'm willing to submit. Yang Yuanbai's expression changed when he saw this. He hurriedly knelt on the ground and kowtowed. Oh, not bad. There's still a smart person. Kid, drink the demonic blood. From now on, you will be the servant of our noble demon race. Enjoy the glory of the demon race. The Black Sky Devil Emperor laughed. He pointed his palm, and a drop of demonic blood flew into Yang Yuanbai's mouth. Yang Yuanbai's body began to explode crazily. Black scales grew out from his body, turning him into a half-human, half-demon existence. After completely transforming into a demonic being, Yang Yuanbai looked at the Black Sky Demon Emperor with respect in his eyes. The power that came from the bloodline made it so that he had no choice but to submit. What about the 2 of you? Do you choose to submit or die? The Black Sky Devil Emperor stared at Chu Fengmian and Luo Shi and sneered. Master, these 2 are stubborn. They aren't worthy of a chance. Just kill them. Yang Yuanbai stared at Chu Fengmian with incomparable hatred. Master, please let me capture these 2 personally. I want to torture them. Okay, you go. The Black Sky Devil Emperor looked at Yang Yuanbai with interest and said with a smile, Yes. Yang Yuanbai stepped forward, looked at Chu Fengmian with a ferocious face and laughed. Kid, you didn't expect that you would fall into my hands today, right? Don't worry, I won't let you die so easily. I will torture you and play with your woman in front of you. I'll let you watch carefully. As Yang Yuanbai spoke, a demonic intent condensed in his palm and turned into a demonic claw that grabbed at Chu Fengmian. Just an ant? How dare you be so arrogant? Luo Shi, who was standing beside Chu Fengmian, had a change in expression. She couldn't hold back the killing intent in her heart and immediately attacked. A five-colored light burst out from her palm. The moment the five-colored light swept past, the devil that was looking at Yuan Bai was instantly cut down. His body fell into the five-colored light and was destroyed layer by layer. What? Eighth Tribulation Emperor Gu. The Black Sky Devil Emperor, Wu Ji, and Wu Shi felt the aura on Luo Shi's body at the same time, and their expressions changed. They had thought that Chu Fengmian and Luo Shi were just two ants who had sneaked in and weren't worth mentioning. However, when the Eighth Tribulation Emperor Gu's cultivation realm was revealed, their expressions changed drastically. So what if you're the Eighth Tribulation Emperor Gu? You'll definitely die if you fall into the hands of the demon race alone. I've already guessed that someone would come to save the Princess of the Sea, so I've already set up a great array to capture you and give you to the young emperor. The young emperor will be even happier. The Black Sky Emperor Gu looked at Luo Shi, and his expression changed drastically. He said viciously, "Attack, capture this woman. Give her to the young emperor, and the young emperor will reward you handsomely." Yes, Wu Ji, Wu Shi, and the rest of the demon race attacked at the same time. The Thunderfire sect had been transformed into a demon realm. Demonic intent was everywhere, and it was enough for the demon race to unleash their full strength. The demon race danced wildly and attacked Luo Shi. A bunch of puny demon race dares to be so presumptuous in the 9 regions? You want to conquer the 9 regions? You're courting death. All of you die. Chu Fengmian laughed loudly. The king of the inner demons suddenly appeared behind him. These demon race members were the elites of the demon race. They were far from the demon race at the edge of the Nether Ghost region. The demon race's bloodline was the best nourishment for the king of the inner demons. Chapter 1472. The king of the inner demons was no weaker than a peak 7 Tribulation Emperor Gu. Dealing with a group of true emperors was no different from massacre. He rushed in like a wolf in a flock of sheep, slaughtering the devils one by one. Luo Shi charged towards Wu Ji and Wu Shi. With her 8 Tribulation Ancient Emperor Cultivation Realm, she was able to suppress the 2 ancient emperors of the devil race in an instant. 5-colored light flashed continuously. Who are you? Who are you? The king of the inner demons? This is the legendary king of the inner demons, a supreme existence in the devil race. How can he be controlled by someone else? Wu Tian stared at Chu Fengmian and roared. He couldn't believe what he was seeing, especially after seeing the king of the inner demons. The king of the inner demons was a supreme existence even in the devil race. How could he be subdued by Chu Fengmian? He thought that he had the upper hand and could capture the Princess of the Sea and Chu Fengmian's group in one fell swoop. Who would have thought that things would turn out this way? The young emperor should know who I am better than you. However, you won't have the chance to ask him today. Those who dare to step into the 9 realms will all die today. Chu Fengmian didn't want to waste time talking and unleashed his full power. The power of the war dragon enveloped his body. The war dragon bloodline was the bane of the dragon race. Wu Tian was a big shot in the devil race with a noble bloodline. Ordinary dragon bloodlines wouldn't be able to suppress him. Even the war dragon bloodline wouldn't be able to do so. However, Chu Fengmian's bloodline contained the essence blood of progenitor Tianlong. Even the 10 sky demons of the demon race were inferior to the ancestral sky dragon. When the power of the bloodline was fully unleashed, the strength of the Black Sky Demon Emperor was suppressed by 30%. Die! Chu Fengmian's spirit force condensed in his palm, and the dragons roared. He unleashed the first move of the ancestor's art. Rumble! Not only the Black Sky Demon Emperor, but the countless demons around him were also targeted by Chu Fengmian. They were all killed on the spot by this palm strike. The king of the inner demons continued to devour the essence blood of the devils, causing his strength to rise steadily. You're the brat who stole the bronze heavenly demon skeleton. Black Sky Devil Emperor glared at Chu Fengmian and suddenly shouted. He remembered Chu Fengmian's identity. However, the Black Sky Demon Emperor was even more shocked when he recognized Chu Fengmian's identity. He remembered that the person who had snatched the bronze heavenly demon skeleton from the young emperor was merely an immortal realm brat. In the eyes of the ancient emperors, Wu wasn't even an ant. However, in just a few months, Chu Fengmian's current strength had already reached such a level Chu Fengmian's eyes were cold. It seemed that the news of the young emperor's bronze, heavenly demon skeleton being stolen had spread throughout the devil race. Once the devil race found out about Chu Fengmian's identity, he would be hunted down by countless devils. Especially since Chu Fengmian had cultivated the half-step immortal real body with the help of the bronze, heavenly demon skeleton. This was extremely attractive to the countless demon clans. Die. Chu Fengmian turned his palm. Looking at Wu Tian, who was still gathering his demonic will, he unleashed another palm strike. Endless spiritual energy gathered and turned into a huge dragon claw. The second form of the primordial ancestor was executed and shrouded the black sky demon emperor. Puff! The demonic intent that had gathered around the black sky demon emperor's body was instantly shattered. The power of the primogenitor's second move struck the black sky demon emperor's body and shattered it. The devil race shall not perish. Reconstruct the golden body. The flesh and blood of Wu Tian demon emperor was still roaring in the air. He was still trying to gather his flesh and blood. However, Chu Fengmian would not give him the chance. The battle dragon claw formed above Chu Fengmian's head and swept across. The flesh and blood that was trying to gather was scattered into a cloud of blood mist. At the same time, Chu Fengmian summoned the king of inner demons. The king of inner demons dashed forward and grabbed the flesh and blood of Wu Tian demon emperor and devoured it. The king of inner demons did not let go of the essence blood of the devil race in the air. Boom! After devouring so much essence blood of the devil race, the king of inner demons' power seemed to have reached its peak. His body began to expand. At the same time, the king of inner demons devoured countless demonic wills. At this moment, the king of inner demons began to level up. Demons danced wildly around the Heart Demon King. However, the Heart Demon King was like an ancient demon emperor that commanded all demons in all directions. Before him, all demons bowed their heads and submitted to him. The power of the king of inner demons rose steadily. It was 7 to 8 times more terrifying than before and was still rising. The increase in power finally stopped when it reached 10 times. The king of inner demons had stepped into the realm of 8 tribulations Emperor Gu. Great! The king of inner demons has stepped into the realm of 8 tribulations Emperor Gu. I have another helper. Chu Fengmian was delighted and recalled the king of inner demons back into his body. Originally, Chu Fengmian had rarely used the king of inner demons as his strength had increased. After all, the king of inner demons with the strength of 7 tribulations Emperor Gu could only affect the mind of 8 tribulations Emperor Gu. Chu Fengmian was now able to bombard 8 tribulations Emperor Gu with his strength alone. The king of inner demons was indeed of little use. However, things were different now. The king of inner demons had already ascended to 8 tribulations Emperor Gu. If it attacked, even 9 tribulations Emperor Gu might be affected by the king of inner demons. The king of inner demons would play a crucial role in Chu Fengmian's future battle with 9 tribulations Emperor Gu. On the other side, Luo Shi had also easily killed the 2 demon Emperor Gu, Wu Ji and Wu Shi. Given her strength, killing several 7 tribulations Emperor Gu was an extremely easy task. I've just arrived in the 9 regions, and I've already encountered such a troublesome matter. It seems that the 9 regions are about to change. Chu Fengmian looked at the entire Thunderfire sect. There was no longer a single disciple. All the disciples before this were impersonated by the Devil Clan. The entire sect was most likely annihilated by the Devil Clan. Chapter 1473. What should we do with him? Luo Shi's eyes flashed as she looked at the Princess of the Sea. Luo Shi had also heard of the Princess of the Sea before. She was a famous prodigy in the sea and had the potential to become one of the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu. She was even a prodigy who was half a step into the celestial realm. The 4 great factions had always been fighting both openly and covertly. If it was in front of everyone, they would still have some misgivings. But behind the scenes, the 4 major forces fought each other every year, and who knew how many disciples had fallen. Luo Shi wasn't a murderous person, but now that the Princess of the Sea had found out about Chu Fengmian and Luo Shi's powers, she would become a problem sooner or later. Let her go. Chu Fengmian glanced at the Princess of the Sea and furrowed his brows. Chu Fengmian wasn't someone who would willfully slaughter the innocent. The Princess of the Sea had never provoked him, and Chu Fengmian didn't want to kill someone for no reason. Although Chu Fengmian had killed countless people in his life, he had never killed the innocent. Don't tell anyone about what happened today. Chu Fengmian looked at the princess of the sea and asked. I know. The princess of the sea glanced at Chu Fengmian with gratitude in her eyes. Lan Ling will remember today's kindness. I will definitely repay you in the future. All right. Chu Fengmian nodded and looked at Luo Shi. Let's go. Time was of the essence, and Chu Fengmian was running out of time. As he spoke, Chu Fengmian and Luo Shi turned into a streak of light and left the Thunderfire sect, flying towards the north region. The Flame Domain could only be considered a lower middle domain among the 9 domains. However, along the way, Chu Fengmian actually saw a lot of life and death realm martial artists. There were even quite a few experts who had stepped onto the life and death steps. As for those at the Divine Force realm, it was unknown how many of them he had met. The strength of the entire Yin domain seemed to have undergone an earth-shattering change. One had to know that in the previous 9 regions, experts who could step onto the life and death steps were extremely rare. Just what had happened in a few short months. The strength of the entire flame realm had increased greatly. Spiritual Qi. The spiritual Qi of the 9 regions is completely different from before. Suddenly, Chu Fengmian noticed that the most obvious change in the 9 realms was spirit Qi. The spirit Qi of the 9 realms was extremely thin to begin with. Even the spirit Qi of the ancient monster continent, a level 7 continent, was much richer than that of the 9 domains. Not to mention the Holy Dragon Mystery Realm, and even the Holy Land Spirit Qi. However, the spiritual Qi in the 9 regions was hundreds or even thousands of times denser than before Chu Fengmian had left. It was almost comparable to the Holy Lands. Under such dense spiritual energy, a martial artist cultivation was practically a meteoric rise. It was countless times faster. However, the denser the spirit Qi, the easier it was for extremely high-grade spirit herbs to be born, or even saint herbs. What happened in the 9 regions? When Chu Fengmian first arrived at the 9 regions, his attention was mainly focused on the 2 Devil Emperor Gu, so he didn't pay close attention. Only now did Chu Fengmian realize that the 9 regions in front of him were completely different from what he had imagined. It was like a brand new place. If it wasn't for this familiar landscape, Chu Fengmian would have thought that he had gone to another continent. So, just as Chu Fengmian was puzzled, an escape light flew in front of him. It seemed to be the escape light of a life and death realm martial artist. He didn't look very old and seemed to be a young man. If it was before, he would definitely be a rare genius. However, Chu Fengmian discovered along the way that this kind of aptitude could only be considered passable, but not a genius. Please wait. Chu Fengmian's figure flashed, and he took a step forward, standing in front of the escape light and blocking it. Who are you? Why are you stopping me? The young man originally wanted to shout, but when he felt the power on Chu Fengmian's body, his face immediately changed, and he said with a face full of shock, I wonder what instructions Senior has for me. What's going on in the 9 regions? Why did the spirit Qi become so dense? When did it start? Where did your strength come from? Chu Fengmian asked directly. This, Senior doesn't know? The young man was stunned. I was in seclusion before, and now that I've come out, I discovered that I've changed. Chu Fengmian said calmly. Junior has spoken too much. Seeing that Chu Fengmian wasn't angry, the young man let out a sigh of relief and hurriedly said, It's like this. About half a year ago, the spirit Qi of the 9 regions suddenly became denser and denser. Moreover, the 1 sea, 2 skies, and 4 palaces all opened. As for Junior, when I went to the 1,000 treasure heaven, I obtained an ancient pill. After swallowing it, I stepped into the life and death realm. The young man didn't dare to be negligent and answered almost all of Chu Fengmian's questions. 1 sea, 2 skies, and 4 palaces all opened. Even 1,000 treasure heaven and returning ruins heaven opened. Chu Fengmian's eyes revealed an indelible disbelief. These few treasured lands have been passed down since the ancient era of the 9 regions. According to the records in the ancient books, almost every time they opened separately. This was the first time in history that all of them opened together. Chu Fengmian didn't know what exactly happened, but it was enough to bring about a huge change in the 9 regions. The young man's luck wasn't much. The treasures in the 1,000 treasure heaven were as numerous as the hairs on an ox. Once a lucky martial artist obtained a large number of treasures, it wouldn't be difficult for him to become an expert. Now, who are the strongest forces in the 9 regions? Chu Fengmian asked again. The strongest forces in the 9 regions are the 7 great sections. The young man answered. Hearing this answer, Chu Fengmian finally let out a sigh of relief. At least the 9 regions hadn't changed that much. But the young man hesitated. But what? Chu Fengmian asked. But the 9 demons city of the 7 great sects has been removed from the list. Now, the 6 Paths Demon Gate has entered the ranks of the 7 great sects and is vaguely at the top of the 7 great sections. The other 6 great sects are joining forces to suppress the 6 Paths Demon Gate. The young man said, 6 Paths Demon Gate became one of the 7 great sects? 9 Demon City was removed from the list? Hearing this kid, Chu Fengmian and Luo, she couldn't help but glance at each other. They could see the shock in each other's eyes. Previously, Chu Fengmian left the 9 regions because he killed the 6 Paths Demon Gate. However, the Demon Emperor and Sky Demon Supremacy were heavily injured by him. Chapter 1474. After Chu Fengmian asked a few more questions, he let the young man go. Now that the 9 territories had been turned upside down, this young man was just a nobody, so he didn't know much about it. The only thing he was sure of was that the 6 Paths Demon Gate had risen and could even fight against the other 6 great sections. This wasn't good news for Chu Fengmian. After all, Chu Fengmian and the 6 Paths Demon Gate were mortal enemies. Previously, Chu Fengmian had destroyed 8 of the Demon Emperor's incarnations, which was close to destroying the Demon Emperor's Nirvana divine body. Once he knew that Chu Fengmian had returned to the 9 territories, the Demon Emperor wouldn't let him go. Once the Demon Emperor recovered his strength, Chu Fengmian's friends would be in great danger. Let's return to the Northern Territory first. The situation in the 9 territories was more complicated and chaotic than Chu Fengmian had imagined. The most important thing now was to return to the Northern Territory and find Han Yueli. Chu Fengmian and Luo, she hid their figures and shuttled back and forth in the void. Originally, they had to rely on the power of the teleportation array to travel through the 9 territories, but now, Chu Fengmian and Luo Shi's strength was enough to cross the starry sky. As for traveling through the 9 territories, it was even easier. Their speed was astonishing. In a few hours, Chu Fengmian and Luo, she had already left the 9 territories and stepped into the Northern Territory. The situation in the Northern Territory was the same as the Yin Territory. It had undergone earth-shaking changes. Even in the Northern Territory, which was known as the weakest, there were now Divine Power Realm and Life and Death Realm cultivators everywhere. One had to know that in the victorious martial country, a Divine Power Realm saint was a big shot and could establish his own sect. As for Life and Death Realm cultivators, they could be called emperors and sweep through a country. Now, Divine Power Realm and Life and Death Realm cultivators weren't rare, but there weren't many people who had stepped onto the life and death steps. Even though it had only been a few months, the 9 territories had undergone earth-shaking changes. The world energy had become dozens of times richer, and a large number of treasures had been opened. However, it wasn't so easy to step onto the life and death steps. As for Emperor Realm Masters, Chu Fengmian had yet to encounter one. Soon, Chu Fengmian and Luo, she returned to Wuxing country. Looking at the familiar Wuxing country in the huge formation, Chu Fengmian sighed inwardly. The last time he left the victorious martial country, he was only a wind-resisting realm martial artist. He was just a nobody in the northern region. Now that Chu Fengmian had returned, he was already a quasi-emperor. His strength was enough to kill the 8 tribulations Emperor Gu. Among the countless continents in the Daluo star field, Chu Fengmian had become an absolute powerhouse. Wuxing country has also undergone earth-shaking changes. Chu Fengmian was also watching. The originally barren Wuxing country was now rich in spiritual energy, and spiritual herbs were everywhere. Their overall strength had increased by many times. Many blue-clothed guards were stationed at various positions. Currently, the Cold Snow Pavilion was the leader of the victorious martial nation. These blue-clothed disciples were all disciples of the Cold Snow Pavilion. Unknowingly, Chu Fengmian and Luo, she had already arrived in front of the Cold Snow Pavilion. The current Cold Snow Pavilion was completely different from when Chu Fengmian had left. Among the mountain ranges, countless palaces stood in great numbers. It no longer looked like it was in its initial stages. Disciples were walking through it. Above the entire mountain range, there was an incomparably huge formation that shrouded it. It was enough to prevent martial artists from rashly stepping into it. Who are you people? Just as Chu Fengmian was looking at the Cold Snow Pavilion, several blue-clothed men suddenly flew over. These people were all Divine Power Realm martial artists. Among them, the leader had already vaguely stepped into the life and death realm. They stared at Chu Fengmian and questioned coldly. We're here to pay a visit to Pavilion Master Han of the Cold Snow Pavilion. Chu Fengmian also saw that these blue-clothed men were unfamiliar. It seemed that they should be newly promoted disciples. He didn't know them. Pay a visit to Pavilion Master Han. When the Cold Snow Pavilion disciples heard this, their eyes revealed a bit of coldness. They looked at each other and said coldly, "Take these two people down." Rumble. The other Cold Snow Pavilion disciples all attacked at the same time. Spiritual power filled the sky, bombarding Chu Fengmian and Luo Shi. These surges of spiritual power condensed into a pagoda, falling from the sky and suppressing them. What's going on? Chu Fengmian frowned. Why was the Cold Snow Pavilion so vigilant? Even if these Cold Snow Pavilion disciples didn't know Chu Fengmian and Luo Shi, they shouldn't have attacked without knowing what was going on. However, these Divine Power Realm martial artists wanted to suppress Chu Fengmian. It was simply a dream. Chu Fengmian only lightly condensed a bit of spiritual power. The pagoda suppressing him suddenly shattered. However, Chu Fengmian didn't hurt these martial artists. He didn't want to know what was going on in the Cold Snow Pavilion. What's going on? Chu Fengmian said coldly. He already knew that something must have happened in the Cold Snow Pavilion. Otherwise, these Cold Snow Pavilion disciples wouldn't have attacked so rashly. Not good. This person's strength is extremely strong. Quickly go and ask the elders. The Cold Snow Pavilion disciples saw Chu Fengmian's strength, and their faces changed greatly. They hurriedly condensed their spiritual power. It turned into a jade talisman and directly entered the Cold Snow Pavilion. Whoosh! Suddenly, a sword light flew out from the Cold Snow Pavilion. It was a venerable realm martial artist who had stepped into the seventh step of the life and death steps, the Heaven's Mandate realm expert. In the 9 zones, he would definitely be considered a powerhouse. It's Sword-Slaying Elder. Sword-Slaying Elder. These two people are most likely sent by the Beimeng Academy. They said that they want to visit Pavilion Master Han. Please suppress these two people. Seeing the sword light approaching, the group of Cold Snow Pavilion's disciples all shouted loudly. People from the Beimeng Academy? Whoosh! Hearing these words, the sword light was furious. In an instant, the sword light pointed at Chu Fengmian and slashed. "Oh, Sword-Slaying King, do you dare to attack me?" Chu Fengmian shouted when he saw the sword light coming towards him. The sword light that was approaching Chu Fengmian suddenly trembled and shattered when heard the voice. Then, a figure flew out from the sword light. When he saw Chu Fengmian, his eyes were filled with disbelief. "Chief Commander?" The figure looked at Chu Fengmian and said in disbelief, "What? I haven't seen you for a few months. Sword-Slaying King, you dare to attack me? Do you want to exchange swordsmanship with me?" Chapter 1475. It's really the Great Commander. Swordslayer King came back to his senses and knelt in front of Chu Fengmian. "Great Commander, you're finally back." The Swordslayer King's eyes were filled with excitement. "Great Commander? Who is he? Even Swordslayer Elder is so respectful. Is he the founder of our Cold Snow Pavilion?" Upon seeing this, the Cold Snow Pavilion disciples were all dumbfounded. They began to discuss among themselves, unable to figure out what had happened. Swordslayer King was one of the strongest saints in Cold Snow Pavilion. Chu Fengmian had taught him swordsmanship before. He had benefited greatly from the changes in the 9 zones. His cultivation had risen rapidly, and he had reached the 7th step of the life and death steps, the Heavenly Mandate realm. He was one of the prominent elders in Cold Snow Pavilion. These disciples remembered that Sword Slayer King had never knelt in front of Pavilion Master Han Yueli. But now, he was so respectful to Chu Fengmian. What happened? When Chu Fengmian saw the Sword Slayer King's reaction, he knew that something big must have happened in the Cold Snow Pavilion. Judging from their conversation, it seemed to be related to Baiming Academy. Chu Fengmian was targeted in Baiming Academy. He was forced to leave Northern Region for Central Region and participate in the 9 Zones Genius Competition. This time, Chu Fengmian originally had the intention of taking control of the North Sea Academy. After all, Baiming Academy was established by Chu Fengmian's senior brother. Chu Fengmian didn't want Baiming Academy to be destroyed in this storm. Great Commander, this isn't the place to talk. Let's go inside. King Swordslayer looked around nervously. He moved his hand and opened the restriction of the Cold Snow Pavilion, bringing Chu Fengmian inside. At the same time, he also heard the discussions of the surrounding Cold Snow Pavilion disciples. This is the founder of our Cold Snow Pavilion. He's the reason why Cold Snow Pavilion can rise. You must remember him. Sword Slayer King thought for a while and called Chu Fengmian the founder. After all, Chu Fengmian had taught him before. He was his master, so it wasn't too much to call him the founder. Patriarch, I've heard that our Cold Snow Pavilion used to be a small sect. Later, it was led by an expert that made it strong and prosperous. Could it be this Patriarch? Even the Pavilion Master's strength is unfathomable. How terrifying is the Ancestral Master's strength? With the Patriarch's return, why should we be afraid of the North Sea Academy? The disciples of the Cold Snow Pavilion discussed excitedly. It didn't take long for the news of Chu Fengmian's return to the Cold Snow Pavilion to spread throughout the Cold Snow Pavilion. Chu Fengmian didn't bother to pay attention to these discussions. Anyway, Chu Fengmian wouldn't sit idly by when the Cold Snow School was in trouble. There was nothing wrong with being an ancestral master. Chu Fengmian and Luo, she followed Lord Slayer all the way to the deepest part of the Cold Snow Pavilion. Inside, there was an incomparably huge and eye-catching palace. Cloud Feather Palace? Chu Fengmian was naturally very familiar with this palace. It was the Cloud Feather Palace that he had obtained in the returning ruined sky. In the end, the inheritance of Cloud Feather Palace was inherited by Han Yueli. After all, Chu Fengmian wanted to create his own path of Sword Dao. It wasn't suitable for him to inherit it from anyone else. Even though Chu Fengmian obtained the 9 profound immortal art, he only integrated it into his own sword technique. He didn't inherit the 9 profound immortal art. However, the Cloud Feather Palace had always been in the returning ruined sky. Now, it was in the Cold Snow Pavilion. Commander, the Pavilion Master, and everyone else are cultivating in the Cloud Feather Palace. My Jade Talisman allows me to enter alone. Why don't I go in and inform the Pavilion Master? Lord Slayer brought Chu Fengmian to the entrance of the Cloud Feather Palace and stopped. The palace's restrictions were extremely complicated. After all, it was a heaven-grade spirit treasure. Now that the Cloud Feather Palace had recovered its full strength, even a true emperor wouldn't be able to force his way in. For example, Lord Slayer and the others were only able to enter freely because of Han Yueli's token. However, they were the only ones who could use the token. They weren't allowed to bring others in. It's fine, just go in, Chu Fengmian said casually. The restrictions of the Cloud Feather Palace were indeed powerful. However, Chu Fengmian was the master of the Cloud Feather Palace. How could the restrictions stop him? The symbol of the Cloud Feather Palace suddenly appeared on Chu Fengmian's forehead. It turned into a wave of spiritual energy and shrouded Chu Fengmian and Luo Shi. Chu Fengmian stepped into the palace. None of the restrictions on the Cloud Feather Heavenly Palace stopped Chu Fengmian. So many people. Chu Fengmian saw at least dozens of martial artists and demon gods sitting in the Cloud Feather Palace. They were at least masters who had stepped onto the life and death steps. There were only a few sovereigns who had stepped into the Heaven's Mandate Realm. Among them, the strongest was an old demon god. The dragon force on his body was extremely prominent. His strength had reached the peak of the immortal realm. He was only one step away from stepping into the Emperor realm and becoming a quasi-emperor. Who is it? How could someone break into the Cloud Feather Palace? The moment Chu Fengmian stepped into the Cloud Feather Palace, the martial artists and demon gods who were cultivating with their eyes closed open their eyes and stared at Chu Fengmian nervously. They were already preparing their killer moves and were about to attack Chu Fengmian. The great commander is back. Come and meet him quickly. Sword Slayer King shouted when he saw this scene. Great commander? Young master? Young master Chu. Whoosh. The martial artists and demon gods who were gathering their spiritual energy just now dispersed their spiritual energy and rushed over. They were extremely shocked when they saw Chu Fengmian's gaze. Young master, you are back. The strongest demon god, Old Man hurriedly said when he saw Chu Fengmian. Pavilion Master Han is back. I guessed that the young master would be back soon. Today, the young master has finally returned. This old man was the ancient dragon turtle Luo, he whom Chu Fengmian had met before. With the bloodline that Chu Fengmian had bestowed upon him, he had already ascended to become a dragon. Now, with the improvement of his strength and the great number of fortuitous encounters, his bloodline was rising steadily. He had already begun to transform into an ancient battle dragon. His strength was also extremely terrifying. As for the others, such as the saints that Chu Fengmian had subdued in the Qin Empire Kingdom, Gu Jin of the Middle State Gu family, and the Gu family head, almost all of them were present. Furthermore, everyone's strength had undergone earth-shaking changes. Why are all of you here? Chapter 1476. Chu Fengmian could understand why the Sword Slayer King and Luo he were in the Cold Snow Pavilion. However, the Gu family had also come to the Cold Snow Pavilion. Our Sky Spring City has been occupied by the Six Paths Demon Sect. We have no choice but to seek refuge with Pavilion Master Han. When Gu Jin said this, there was a hint of pain in his eyes. In the entire Gu clan, only my father and I managed to escape. The other disciples all died in the hands of the six demonic sects. The Six Paths Demon Sect. Chu Fengmian's eyes flickered and he was about to say something. Suddenly, a series of angry roars came from outside, and waves of spiritual power bombarded the mountain protection array of the Cold Snow School. Under the bombardment, the entire Cold Snow Pavilion was shaking violently. The palaces began to shake vigorously. The Biming Academy is here again. Luo He and the others looked gloomy. What's going on? Chu Fengmian asked coldly. The Biming Academy was attacking the Cold Snow Pavilion with such great fanfare? After all, Chu Fengmian and Han Yueli were still disciples of the Biming Academy in the 9 regions. The Biming Academy heard that the Pavilion Master had returned and wanted the Cold Snow Pavilion to join the Biming Academy. The Pavilion Master didn't allow it, and they were negotiating. However, a few elders from the Biming Academy suddenly launched a sneak attack. The Pavilion Master was injured and is still recuperating now. The Sword Slayer King's eyes were filled with hatred when he said this. Although the Cold Snow Pavilion was much stronger than before, it only occupied a few countries in the North region. The Biming Academy was the most powerful force in the North region. They were not qualified to compete with the Biming Academy. Han Yueli was injured. They might not be a match for the elders of the North region. They injured Yueli? How dare they? I'd like to see how capable the Biming Academy is. Chu Fengmian's eyes were cold. He disappeared from the palace in a flash. Outside the Cold Snow Pavilion, several elders were standing on top of the Cold Snow Pavilion, looking at the restrictive spell under their feet. From time to time, they would gather their spiritual power and bombard it. Although their strength was not enough to break the protective mountain array, it was enough to shake the Cold Snow Pavilion. The disciples of the Cold Snow Pavilion all hid under the protective grand spell formation, trembling in fear. No one dared to step forward and fight the elders. Has the Cold Snow Pavilion decided to be a coward? An old man sneered as he looked down at the Cold Snow Pavilion. Except for Han Yueli, there are no other experts in the Cold Snow Pavilion. Of course, they don't dare to show their faces. A small force actually dares to make an enemy out of us. You're courting death. A few old men were talking to each other. These old men all had extremely strong power of heaven and earth. Clearly, they were all Emperor Gu. There were 5 Emperor Gu in the lead. Behind these 5 Emperor Gu stood dozens of North Mang Academy's disciples. Without exception, they were all true emperors. With such strength, if they could break the protective mountain array of the Cold Snow Pavilion, it would be a piece of cake for them to sweep through the Cold Snow Pavilion. The 9 regions are really weak. They don't even have many true emperors, let alone Emperor Gu. However, I didn't expect a 7 Tribulations Emperor Gu to be hiding in this small Cold Snow Pavilion. She's from the 9 regions. Subduing her will make her easier for us." An old man's eyes flickered with greed as he spoke. However, the 9 regions have a lot of treasures. There are many ancient treasures and even immortal mansions. It's a waste to let these ants from the 9 regions get their hands on them. That's right. If we get our hands on them, we'll be able to create many experts. However, our Qin clan has taken the initiative this time. It's enough for us to plunder a large amount of treasures. Another old man laughed complacently. But what about the protective mountain array? Keep bombarding it. I don't believe that this protective mountain array can withstand our combined attacks. Rumble. The 5 Emperor Gu joined forces to attack. A crack appeared on the Cold Snow School's protective grand formation. Although the array was set up by Han Yueli and was extremely sturdy, it was still a lifeless object. Under the continuous bombardment, he was already on the verge of collapsing. Good. Keep attacking. An old man laughed with a ferocious expression. Roar. At this moment, a dragon's roar resounded from within the Cold Snow Pavilion. It was a war dragon, an ancient war dragon formed from spiritual energy. As it soared into the sky, the combined attacks of the 5 old men were shattered on the spot. At the same time, a figure arrived outside the Cold Snow Pavilion. "You're not from the North Sea Academy. Who are you?" Chu Fengmian glanced at the 5 old men and the group of true emperors behind them. The merit laws of these people were completely different from the ones of the North Sea Academy. After all, the North Sea Academy was founded by Chu Fengmian's first senior brother, so he was very familiar with the merit laws of the Academy. However, this group of people cultivated a different kind of cultivation method. Obviously, they all came from the same force, but they weren't from the Beimeng Academy. "Oh, there's such an expert in the Cold Snow Pavilion?" When an old man saw that their joint attack was neutralized, his eyes revealed a bit of surprise. He looked at Chu Fengmian, sized him up, and sneered. "I was wondering who you were. You're just a puny quasi-emperor. A quasi-emperor is a big deal in the 9 domains, but unfortunately, you're just an ant in our eyes. Who are we? You won't know even if I tell you. But since you're already a dead man, there's no harm in telling you. We're not from the North Sea Academy. We're from the Chun clan of the 8 Saints continent." An old man burst out laughing. "However, the North Sea Academy has already submitted to our Chun clan. Cold Snow Pavilion, surrender obediently today, and we can spare a few disciples for you. Otherwise, when the formation is broken, all the disciples of Cold Snow Pavilion will die today." The Chun clan of the 8 Saints continent? People from the Yama Starfield? Chu Fengmian suddenly searched for the name of the 8 Saints continent in his mind. The 8 Saints continent didn't belong to the Daluo Starfield, but it was a 4th-class continent in the Yama Starfield, which was close to the Daluo Starfield. Chapter 1477. Now, it wasn't just the experts from Daluo Starfield. Experts from other starfields also came to the 9 realms for the treasure. The arrival of an expert from Daluo Starfield was already troublesome enough. Now, even a power like Yama Starfield came to interfere. "Oh, little guy, you know quite a lot. You know about our Yama Starfield?" The old man was surprised to hear Chu Fengmian's words. He thought that Chu Fengmian was just a native disciple of the 9 realms who hadn't even been to the outer space. He didn't expect Chu Fengmian to know their identity. "Looks like you know quite a lot. Little guy, since you know about our power, kneel down and work for us. It's much better than staying in a small power like yours." An old man looked at Chu Fengmian with greed in his eyes. "Primogenitor, Sky Dragon Essence Blood. The 9 regions even have such a treasure. Kid, hand over all your fortuitous encounters and become our Chun clan's slave. Today is your only chance to live." "With just you guys?" Chu Fengmian didn't get angry. Instead, a disdainful smile appeared on his face. "Not worthy? Boy, what did you say? Arrogant. You're courting death. No need to talk nonsense with this brat. Chun Wang, kill him." Hearing Chu Fengmian's words, the elders of the Chun family flew into a rage and ordered. Behind them, a 6th Tribulation true emperor stepped forward and looked at Chu Fengmian. Murderous intent surged in his eyes. He immediately grabbed Chu Fengmian with one hand, intending to crush Chu Fengmian to death. "Ancestor, watch out!" The disciples hurriedly shouted after seeing Chun Wang's sudden attack. However, Chun Wang was too fast. Before they could finish their words, Chen Wang's hand had already enveloped Chu Fengmian's body. What arrogant words! I thought you were some big shot. You're just an ant, yet you dare to go against the Chen clan? Die! Chen Wang sneered after seeing that Chu Fengmian didn't move. However, the moment his hand was about to crush Chu Fengmian, a wave of spirit energy suddenly burst out from Chu Fengmian's body. Rumble! The palm that was about to pinch Chu Fengmian was immediately shattered by this wave of spiritual power. What? Chen Wang's face paled. His palm was sent flying, and he was forced to retreat. However, right at this moment, a black figure charged towards Chen Wang from all directions. A dragon claw appeared out of nowhere and descended from the sky. Even Emperor Gu of the Chun family hadn't noticed the appearance of this dragon claw. They hadn't even had time to react before Chen Wang's body was crushed by this claw. What happened? Who are you? When the elders of the Chun family saw that Chen Wang had been killed in a single move, their expressions changed drastically. They stared at Chu Fengmian with killing intent surging in their eyes. However, under that killing intent, there was also a hint of fear. They had thought that Chu Fengmian was just a quasi-emperor. The strength of a quasi-emperor was indeed considered strong in the 9 domains, but in front of Emperor Gu, he was just an ant. Moreover, they had 5 Emperor Gu on their side. When they were dealing with Chu Fengmian, these Emperor Gu didn't plan on joining the fight. Chen Wang, a 6th Tribulation true emperor, was more than enough. But now, Chen Wang was killed by Chu Fengmian in a single move? I'm here to kill you all. Suddenly, Chu Fengmian didn't stop after killing Chen Wang. Instead, his body flickered as he rushed towards the 5 Emperor Gu. These people from the Chun family actually dared to attack the Cold Snow Pavilion and even injured Han Yueli. All of this gave Chu Fengmian a reason to kill this group of people from the Chun family here. The moment he attacked, a dense spirit energy enveloped Chu Fengmian's body. The power of his war dragon bloodline was fully activated. In the air, Chu Fengmian's body turned into an incomparably huge primordial war dragon. There were a total of 40,000 spirit formations engraved on the dragon scales. At a glance, it was a miniature version of progenitor Tianlong. The nomological laws of the entire sky were under Chu Fengmian's control. Under Chu Fengmian's control, it turned into a cage that no one could escape from. This person's strength is strange. Don't worry, no matter how strong his bloodline is, he's only a quasi-emperor. It's easy for us to kill him. Let's attack together. Let's see how he'll deal with us. These few ancient emperors of the Chun clan seemed to be very experienced in battle. They reacted instantly. When they saw Chu Fengmian's primordial war dragon form charging towards them, a sneer appeared on their faces. Channeling their spirit energy, the 5 of them joined forces and turned into a ray of divine light aimed at Chu Fengmian. Destroy. Chu Fengmian didn't dodge when he saw the 5 people's joint attack coming at him. Instead, he waved his dragon claw, and the divine light was immediately shattered by the dragon claw. Chu Fengmian had killed countless 8 Calamity Emperor Gu. 5-7 Calamity Emperor Gu were considered an extremely powerful force in the 9 domains. Even in the Daluotian star field, the 5-7 Calamity Emperor Gu could be considered unstoppable. Unfortunately, they had encountered Chu Fengmian today. Furthermore, they had provoked Chu Fengmian. Under Chu Fengmian's murderous intent, their only outcome was death. Boom! As the dragon claw swept across, the bodies of the 5 Chen clan ancient emperors were smashed into smithereens. They screamed in agony. Their bodies screamed and turned into clouds of blood mist. The sky-devouring secret technique was activated and turned into a huge vortex above Chu Fengmian's head. It devoured all the essence and blood. At the same time, the countless remaining Chun family disciples were horrified. These 5 Emperor Gu were all elders of the Chen family. They were all important figures, but now they had all died in the hands of Chu Fengmian. The moment the Chun family disciples saw these elders die in the hands of Chu Fengmian, they wanted to flee in all directions. However, under Chu Fengmian's control, no one could take out the Heaven Ascension Sword. Under the activation of the sky-devouring secret technique, the Chun family disciples were devoured and torn apart by the power of the vortex. These Chun family disciples were all true emperors and were useless against the divine tree. Chu Fengmian pointed his finger at their essence and turned them into elixirs in the sky-devouring secret technique. These elixirs were formed from the purest energy of their essence and contained a huge amount of spiritual energy. In total, they turned into dozens of blood elixirs. Chapter 1478. Chu Fengmian glanced at the stunned Swordslayer King and the others. With a tap of his palm, the blood pills flew towards them. Chu Fengmian couldn't stay in the Han Snow Pavilion forever. Only by strengthening the Han Snow Pavilion could they protect themselves. Yin Luo Star Region. Chun Family. Beimang Academy. Chu Fengmian looked in the direction of the Beimang Academy with a fierce look in his eyes. The Beimang Academy was founded by Chu Fengmian's eldest senior brother. Jianling Chu Fengmian wouldn't let it fall into the hands of others. Chu Fengmian looked at the Han Snow Pavilion. The mountain protection array of the Han Snow Pavilion was about to break under the joint attack of the Chun family's Emperor Gu. Chu Fengmian waved his hand and shrouded it with spiritual energy. With a sudden grab, a brand new mountain protection array was formed. At the same time, Chu Fengmian tapped his finger and a few drops of blood essence flew out and fell into the center of the mountain protection array. They began to absorb the power of the mountain protection array and began to expand, turning into a huge blood dragon. This blood dragon was born in the mountain protection array. As long as the mountain protection array was not destroyed, this blood dragon would never die. It was impossible for the 7 Calamities Emperor Gu to deal with this blood dragon. He would be exhausted to death. Even if the 8 Calamities Emperor Gu came to attack, it would be enough to delay him for a while. During this time, as long as Chu Fengmian was in the 9 regions, he would be able to return in time. However, Chu Fengmian glanced at the 9 regions with dissatisfaction. The 9 regions were no longer the same as before. Experts from Daluo Star Region, Yinluo Star Region, and many other star regions had come to the 9 regions. The mountain protection array could only withstand the attack of the 8 Calamities Emperor Gu. It wasn't enough to satisfy Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian's eyes flashed as he looked at the Han Snow Pavilion. Suddenly, he saw sword lights flying out from the Cloud Feather Palace. Each sword light was a spiritual sword. There were a total of 100,000 of them. It was the Black Mysterious Sword Array. Chu Fengmian had left the Dark Mysterious Sword Formation in the Cloud Feather Heavenly Palace. As Chu Fengmian grew stronger, the Dark Mysterious Sword Formation was no longer enough to help Chu Fengmian fight his enemies. However, this Black Mysterious Sword Formation was enough for Chu Fengmian to set up a deadly sword formation. However, the grade of the Black Mysterious Sword Formation was still a little too low. Fire. Rumble. A colorless flame suddenly surged from Chu Fengmian's palm. This was the pure Yang Sky Fire. Chu Fengmian grabbed the Black Profound Sword Array and threw it into the pure Yang Heavenly Fire. The spirit swords turned into balls of liquid in the pure Yang Heavenly Fire. At the same time, Chu Fengmian opened his empty ring. A large number of spiritual weapons flew out from his empty ring. Most of these spiritual weapons were heaven-grade spiritual weapons. There were hundreds of them. Chu Fengmian had already killed countless true emperors and ancient emperors. He had obtained a large number of heaven-grade spirit treasures, but none of them were of any use to him. Now, he could use them to form the obsidian sword formation. One by one, the heaven-grade spiritual weapons were thrown into the pure sun heavenly fire. They immediately melted and merged with the Black Mysterious Sword Formation. Chu Fengmian threw in hundreds of heaven-grade spiritual weapons in one go. Swordslayer King and the others opened their mouths but didn't know what to say. Although heaven-grade spiritual weapons weren't as precious as before in the 9 realms, they weren't as common as cabbages either. Chu Fengmian taking out hundreds of heaven-grade spiritual weapons in one go was comparable to the wealth of a great power. Young lord, what kind of heaven-defying fortune did you get? Luo he looked at Chu Fengmian with mixed emotions. When he first met Chu Fengmian was still a kid. But now, he couldn't see through Chu Fengmian's strength. Even Emperor Gu could be easily killed by Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian's strength was beyond his imagination, and he also had a large amount of wealth. He must have robbed many sects to have such wealth. Our Cold Snow Pavilion is going to be rich. Countless disciples of the Cold Snow Pavilion were overjoyed when they saw the dazzling heaven-grade spiritual weapons. The sight of hundreds of heaven-grade spirit artifacts appearing at the same time was something that they could not even dream of. In the sky, hundreds of heaven-grade spirit artifacts gathered together with the black, profound sword formation. Under Chu Fengmian's control, they began to solidify. Gradually, they turned into sword shadows in the sky. There were a total of 1,000 spiritual swords. Compared to the 100,000 spiritual swords in the black, mysterious sword formation, the number was much smaller. However, the power that emanated from each of these spiritual swords was enough to shock anyone. Heaven-grade spiritual weapons. Every single one of these 1,000 spiritual swords was a heaven-grade spiritual weapon. Chu Fengmian wanted to use 1,000 heaven-grade spiritual swords to form a peerless killing formation. 1,000 identical spiritual swords were condensed and placed in every corner of the Cold Snow Pavilion. Each spiritual sword was an eye of the formation. Once it was activated, it could turn into a killing sword formation. Coupled with the Blood Dragon in the protective mountain array, even the 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu would die if he was not careful. Not bad. Chu Fengmian operated the sword formation and felt the sharp sword radiance. A smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. With the protection of the sword formation, Chu Fengmian did not have to worry about leaving the Cold Snow Pavilion. At least, the 8 Tribulations Emperor Gu would not be able to break the sword formation. Only the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu could break it. However, the 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu was extremely rare in the Daluotian star field. Chu Fengmian had only seen a few 9 Tribulations Emperor Gu. Such an expert would not come to deal with the Cold Snow Pavilion. Don't worry and cultivate in seclusion. With the protection of the sword formation, there is nothing to worry about. Chu Fengmian looked at the Sword Slayer King, Luo He, and the others and said, "Yes." Hearing Chu Fengmian's words, their faces relaxed. Since they were targeted by the North Sea Academy, they had been on tenterhooks every day. Now that they had the protection of the sword formation, they could relax. Rays of light flew into the Cold Snow Pavilion and began to cultivate in seclusion to refine the blood elixir that they had just obtained. In a flash, Chu Fengmian came to the deepest part of the Cold Snow Pavilion, the Cloud Feather Palace. Han Yueli was sitting in the secret chamber in the deepest part of the Cloud Feather Palace. A layer of ice condensed on her body and locked her in the ice. One could feel a bone-piercing chill when approaching her. Beside her, Luo Shi and Elder Yun were talking about something. When they saw Chu Fengmian, they stopped talking and walked towards him. The matter outside has been settled. How is Yueli? Chapter 1479. After Han Yueli was injured, Elder Yin had been taking care of Han Yueli. After all, Han Yueli had received the inheritance of the Cloud Feather Palace. No one knew more about the inheritance of the Cloud Feather Palace than Elder Yin. Young Master, Miss Han is not injured. She was injected with spiritual energy when she was fighting against an enemy. Her attempt to forcefully trigger the spiritual energy failed. Now, there's a violent spiritual energy in her body. As long as this spiritual energy is resolved, Miss Han will be fine. Elder Yin respectfully replied to Chu Fengmian's words. Failed to break through? Violent spiritual energy? Chu Fengmian sized up Han Yueli and found that Han Yueli was not injured. Instead, the spiritual energy in her body was extremely chaotic. A spiritual energy was rampaging in Han Yueli's body and had already destroyed many of her internal organs. Although Han Yueli could recover from the destruction of her internal organs in an instant, if this spiritual energy was not resolved, she would be constantly attacked by the spiritual energy. Therefore, Han Yueli sealed her body with ice to seal the violent spiritual energy in her body. Chu Fengmian carefully observed the violent spiritual energy in Han Yueli's body. Suddenly, his eyes were filled with shock. This spiritual energy in Han Yueli's body was continuously devouring the spiritual energy in Han Yueli's body. This gave Chu Fengmian an incomparably familiar feeling. Devouring heaven power. This is the devouring heaven power. What's going on? Han Yueli's body has the devouring heaven power? Chu Fengmian's eyes were filled with shock. The violent spiritual energy in Han Yueli's body was none other than the devouring heaven power. It was a power that Chu Fengmian was incomparably familiar with. Chu Fengmian had obtained the heart of the devouring heaven beast and had also integrated the bloodline power of the devouring heaven beast. Therefore, he was incomparably sensitive to the devouring heaven power. If it was someone else, they might be able to tell that this was an extremely violent spiritual energy that was difficult to deal with. However, Chu Fumian recognized it at a glance. It was the devouring heaven power. How ruthless! Chu Fumian's eyes flashed with killing intent. The heaven-devouring power was in Han Yueli's body. Unless one truly understood the heaven-devouring power, there was no way to neutralize it. As long as the devouring heaven force was not dissolved, it would remain in Han Yueli's body, constantly devouring and eroding the power of Han Yueli. One day, Han Yueli might not be able to suppress it, and all of his spiritual energy would be devoured. Who would have thought that someone would obtain the bloodline of the heaven-devouring beast? The corners of Chu Fumian's mouth turned cold. To be able to use the heaven-devouring secret technique, the person who did this must have also obtained the bloodline of the heaven-devouring beast. It seemed that Chu Fumian was not the only one who had obtained the inheritance of the heaven-devouring beast. After all, Chu Fumian had only obtained the heaven-devouring beast's heart. Innate divine beasts were immortal even after death. Every part of their body contained terrifying power. Someone must have obtained a part of the heaven-swallowing beast, the bloodline of the heaven-devouring beast. If I obtain it, my heaven-devouring secret technique will be further enhanced. At that time, even the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu can be devoured directly. Chu Fumian muttered to himself. According to the legends, the heaven-devouring beast was an existence that could devour the heavens. Continents could be devoured by the heaven-devouring beast in one gulp. What Chu Fumian had now was only a very thin bloodline. If Chu Fumian could obtain a part of the heaven-devouring beast bloodline, his bloodline would be upgraded and his heaven-devouring secret technique would become many times more powerful. The heaven-devouring power was indeed very troublesome for other warriors. However, for Chu Fumian, who also possessed the heaven-devouring beast bloodline, the heaven-devouring power was simply a nourishment for him. Boom! Quietly, Chu Fumian circulated his spiritual energy in his palm. The layer of ice on Han Yueli's body was directly shattered by Chu Fumian. At the same time, the heaven-devouring power that had been sealed in Han Yueli's body suddenly burst out and began to devour the spiritual energy in Han Yueli's body. Chu Fumian's mind moved and circulated the heaven-devouring beast's heart in his body. Suddenly, a surge of heaven-devouring power enveloped Han Yueli. This surge of heaven-devouring power entered Han Yueli's body and immediately turned into a whirlpool. The heaven-devouring power in Han Yueli's body was completely devoured by this whirlpool. In just a few minutes, the heaven-devouring power in Han Yueli's body was completely devoured by this whirlpool. However, Han Yueli did not wake up. She was still resting with her eyes closed. However, a surge of spiritual energy began to surge in her body, breaking through to the next realm. Currently, Han Yueli was at the crucial moment of breaking through to the next realm. She was disturbed by the people of Beimang Academy and was injected with heaven-devouring power. This heaven-devouring power was like a cage that suppressed Han Yueli's realm. Now that the heaven-devouring power had been devoured and dissolved by Chu Fumian, this cage that had been suppressing Han Yueli's realm had completely disappeared. Her realm began to rise. With your current spiritual energy, it's too difficult to break through to the 8th tribulation Emperor Gu. Chu Fumian observed the spiritual energy in Han Yueli's body and frowned. Although the heaven-devouring power was quickly suppressed by Han Yueli, there was still a lot of spiritual energy that was devoured by the heaven-devouring power. Originally, Han Yueli's breakthrough to the 8th tribulation Emperor Gu was in the bag. However, now Chu Fumian could see that Han Yueli's chances of breaking through to the next realm were less than 20%. Once the breakthrough failed, Emperor Gu's losses would be immeasurable. Emperor Gu's Tao was to press forward with indomitable will. Once the breakthrough failed, it would leave behind an inner demon. Unless one's Tao heart was invincible, the next breakthrough would inevitably be affected by the inner demon. It was much more difficult than the first breakthrough to the next realm. Therefore, for most Emperor Gu, once the breakthrough failed, it was very likely that they would not be able to progress further in the future. Of course, Chu Fumian would not let this happen. When Chu Fumian opened his empty ring, several jade bottles flew out. The moment these jade bottles flew out, they were immediately opened. Dozens of divine elixir pills fell into Chu Fengmian's palm almost at the same time. Among these divine elixir pills, the one with the strongest medicinal effect was the original Emperor pill. It was the best elixir for Emperor Gu to break through to the next realm. The remaining divine elixir pills were sufficient to assist the original Emperor pill in breaking through to the next realm. Chapter 1480. A steady stream of medicinal efficacies poured into Han Yueli's body. Now, Han Yueli was on the verge of breakthrough. After feeling the steady stream of medicinal efficacies, she immediately began to devour them and transform them into her spirit energy. Boom! Han Yueli's strength had already reached the level of 8 Tribulation Emperor Gu. She had not been able to break through because she lacked spirit energy. Now that the medicinal efficacies of the original Emperor pill were being continuously devoured, Han Yueli's spirit energy began to rise steadily. She broke through the bottleneck of 7 Tribulation Emperor Gu and officially stepped into 8 Tribulation Emperor Gu. Boom! At this moment, a thundercloud shrouded the Han Snow Pavilion. The moment Han Yueli officially stepped into 8 Tribulation Emperor Gu's realm, the Tribulation Thunder finally descended. Every time an Emperor Realm Master stepped into a new realm, they would have to go through Tribulation Thunder. Only after passing through the Tribulation Thunder could they be considered to have truly stepped into a new realm. Tribulation Thunder. It's Tribulation Thunder. What a terrifying power. What level of Tribulation Thunder is this? When our Han Snow Pavilion is about to break through, the power of Tribulation Thunder. How can it be so terrifying? The disciples in the Han Snow Pavilion raised their heads and looked at the sky. Now, almost all the spirit energy in the entire Northern Territory was rushing towards the Han Snow Pavilion. Waves of spirit energy condensed above the Han Snow Pavilion, forming tribulation clouds. The number of tribulation clouds was almost unimaginable. Each tribulation cloud contained an extremely terrifying power. The power of any one of these tribulation clouds was enough to raise the Han Snow Pavilion to the ground. At a glance, one could see countless purple thunderbolts surging in these tribulation clouds. These thunderbolts were in the shape of dragons, shuttling back and forth in the tribulation clouds. The sound of thunder was endless. In Cloud Feather Heavenly Palace, Chu Fengmian also felt the tribulation clouds condensing. Although they were both 8 Tribulation Emperor Gu's tribulation clouds, Han Yueli's tribulation clouds were much more powerful than Luo Shi's tribulation clouds. After all, Luo Shi barely broke through to 8 Tribulation Emperor Gu's realm with the help of the original Emperor pill's medicinal efficacies. On the other hand, Han Yueli had the strength to break through to 8 Tribulation Emperor Gu. With the assistance of the original Emperor pill and countless saint pills, Han Yueli's breakthrough this time and stepped into the peak of 8 Tribulation Emperor Gu's realm. But then, the Tribulation Thunder was even more terrifying. Elder Yun, ask everyone to leave the Han Snow Pavilion. Chu said, Elder Yun of the Emperor of Cloud Feather of the Tribulation Thunder of the Emperor of the Tribulation Emperor of the Emperor of Nines of the Tribulation Clouds of the God of the Emperor of the Tao of the Emperor to leave of the Tribulation Thunder. The Tribulation Thunder of 8 Tribulation Emperor Gu was difficult for even 7 Tribulation Emperor Gu to withstand. Among the experts of Emperor Gu's realm, there were countless experts who had died in the Tribulation Thunder. No need. At this moment, Han Yueli woke up. She looked in the direction of Chu Fengmian and then stepped out of Cloud Feather Heavenly Palace in a flash. Inside the Han Snow Pavilion, countless disciples were looking at the tribulation clouds condensing in the sky. Suddenly, a figure shot up into the sky. It's the Pavilion Master. The Pavilion Master is awake. The Pavilion Master is going through the tribulation. Countless disciples of the Han Snow Pavilion recognized Han Yueli at a glance and were extremely excited. The rise of the Han Snow Pavilion was inseparable from Han Yueli. In the Han Snow Pavilion, Han Yueli was like a stabilizing force. When she was injured, everyone in the Han Snow Pavilion was in danger. Now that Han Yueli woke up, countless disciples of the Han Snow Pavilion heaved a sigh of relief. Should we make a move? Luo Shi asked from his side. Chu Fengmian and Luo, she also left Cloud Feather Heavenly Palace, but they did not go near Han Yueli. Instead, they stayed in the Han Snow Pavilion and looked up at the sky. No need. Since Yueli is confident, let her go through it alone. Chu Fengmian looked at the sky quietly. He could see that Han Yueli's strength had reached an incredible level. Han Yueli had an innate godly body. Even in the entire Daluo star field, having an innate godly body was a great opportunity. Later on, Han Yueli had obtained the complete inheritance of Cloud Feather Heavenly Palace. Cloud Feather Heavenly Palace was once a force that could dominate the 9 regions. In that era, the 9 regions had not completely declined. Although it was not a sacred region, it was not inferior to the current 4 major forces of the Daluo star field. Cloud Feather Heavenly Palace was enough to dominate that era, which was enough to prove the strength of its inheritance. Although these fortuitous encounters were not as good as Chu Fengmian's, it was enough to show disdain for the geniuses of the world. This small heavenly tribulation was not a problem for Han Yueli. What is the Pavilion Master doing? In the sky, the tribulation cloud was still condensing, but Han Yueli's body suddenly moved. Han Yueli took a step forward and rushed towards the tribulation cloud. She didn't even wait for the tribulation lightning to condense. Instead, she charged into the sky. A blue spiritual sword condensed in her hand, and she held it in her hand. He slashed his sword at the tribulation clouds in the sky. Is the Pavilion Master intending to destroy the tribulation cloud? Seeing this scene, the Sword Slayer Lord and the others exclaimed with their mouths agape. They had just refined the blood pills that Chu Fengmian had given them and had obtained great benefits. The Sword Slayer Lord's spiritual energy was several times stronger than before. He had officially entered the 8th level of the life and death steps, the unblemished realm. In addition to him, Gu Jin and the others had also obtained great benefits. Almost all of them had advanced by 1 level. Of course, the most shocking one was Luo He. After devouring the blood pill, Luo, she did not step into the Quasi-Emperor realm, but she had reached the peak of the immortal realm. However, there were already several rays of golden light flowing within his body. The laws of heaven and earth. Luo He had condensed 20 laws of heaven and earth in her body when she was at the Quasi-Emperor realm. Such aptitude was enough to be considered a genius in Daluo star field and was enough to enter the 4 major powers. Her strength was close to that of a 3-tribulation true emperor. They were originally in their respective palaces, consolidating their cultivation. But now that they felt the power of the heavenly tribulation, they woke up one by one and flew out, just in time to see this scene. Destroying the tribulation cloud is much harder than passing the tribulation. Why is the Pavilion Master so confident? Luo He looked at the scene in the sky and was extremely shocked. Although they had not experienced Emperor Gu's lightning tribulation before, just by feeling the power in the sky, they could clearly understand how terrifying it was. Chapter 1481. Tribulation Transcendence was extremely difficult and full of danger. Destroying the tribulation cloud was even more difficult than Transcendence. It could be said to be extremely difficult. However, according to ancient legends, the benefits of destroying the tribulation cloud were much more than Transcendence. Many experts in the legends destroyed the tribulation cloud instead of Transcendence. However, Transcendence was already an extremely difficult task, let alone destroying the tribulation cloud. Such an action was almost like a lunatic's action. Boom! The moment Han Yueli approached the tribulation cloud seemed to have sensed Han Yueli's intention and was enraged. The heavenly tribulation was high and mighty and judged everything in the world. Destroying the tribulation cloud was tantamount to challenging the heavenly tribulation. Rolling thunder rumbled in the tribulation cloud. Dragons roared, revealing the tribulation cloud's anger. When Han Yueli's sword approached the tribulation cloud, the power of the tribulation cloud was condensed to the extreme. Boom! Loud noises were incessant. Bolts of lightning fell from the sky like heavenly dragons. Heaven and earth shook, and the entire northern region could hear the rumbling of the thunder clearly. The tribulation lightning had truly descended. The power of each thunderbolt was not inferior to the full blow of an 8th tribulation Emperor Gu. There were hundreds of thunderbolts that fell from the sky at the same time. Ordinary tribulation lightning would only have hundreds of thunderbolts after transcending all of them. However, Hanueli's tribulation lightning had hundreds of thunderbolts in the first wave. Obviously, Hanueli's intention to destroy the tribulation cloud had angered the tribulation lightning, causing its power to increase by several times. Even in the face of the tribulation lightning that was several times more powerful, Hanueli's face did not show any signs of nervousness. There was only boundless confidence in her cold face. She slashed out with the blue spiritual sword in her hand. Immediately, the hundreds of thunderbolts were reduced to ashes by the sword. The power of the sword shattered the tribulation lightning that filled the sky. Each thunderbolt was comparable to an 8th tribulation emperor Gu's full blow. However, in front of Hanueli, they could not withstand a single blow. The inheritance of Cloud Feather Palace is indeed extraordinary. Chu Fumian slowly opened his mouth when he saw this scene. Hanueli's current strength was most likely related to the inheritance of Cloud Feather Palace. The Pavilion Master's aptitude is unparalleled among the past heavenly emperors of Cloud Feather Palace. It's a pity that the young master didn't inherit the legacy of Cloud Feather Palace. Elder Yin was also observing Hanueli's tribulation. When he heard Chu Fumian's words, he said regretfully, "In terms of aptitude, Hanueli might be heaven-defying, but how could he compare to Chu Fumian?" Although Chu Fumian was only a quasi-emperor, his strength was not inferior to Hanueli's. Hearing this, Chu Fumian just smiled and didn't answer. The legacy of Cloud Feather Heavenly Palace was good, but Chu Fumian wanted to walk his own path. He wanted to carve out a path for himself, an invincible sword Dao. Throughout history, no one had ever been able to match the way of the sword. No matter how powerful the inheritance was, Chu Fumian would not accept it. "I'm afraid Hanueli's tribulation this time won't be so peaceful." Chu Fumian looked around, and his spiritual awareness swept across the northern region. Just in the vicinity of the cold snow pavilion, Chu Fumian immediately detected the presence of many auras. Most of these people were Emperor Gu's experts. The commotion caused by Hanueli's tribulation this time could be felt by the entire 9 domains. Tribulation was the weakest moment for a martial artist. This was especially true when one had just undergone a tribulation and lacked energy. It was the easiest time to be attacked. Killing an Emperor Gu would bring great benefits. Those who could enter the realm of Emperor Gu were all geniuses who had encountered countless fortuitous encounters. Therefore, Emperor Gu would choose to undergo his tribulation on some desolate continent or planet in the extraterritorial starry sky. There were as many experts as there were clouds in the 9 domains. Undergoing a tribulation at this time would naturally attract the attention of countless people. How many bolts of tribulation lightning are there? How terrifying! Who's undergoing tribulation? In the northern region, countless Emperor Gu opened their eyes and looked in the direction of Hanueli. Not only the northern region, but the entire 9 domains were shaken. Countless streaks of light flew in the direction of the cold snow pavilion. Innate godly body. This is the mystic frost body. This woman must have had an even more amazing fortuitous encounter. Otherwise, she wouldn't be so powerful. Many Emperor Gu were hiding near the cold snow pavilion. Their eyes were quietly sizing up Hanueli. The mystic frost body was not considered an amazing fortuitous encounter among Emperor Gu's level. At the very least, most innate godly bodies might not have the ability to enter the realm of Emperor Gu. However, Hanueli's current strength was not only due to the mystic frost body, but also an even more amazing fortuitous encounter. The more amazing the strength Hanueli displayed, the more amazing the fortuitous encounter she had. Let's go. This is our chance. If we obtain this woman's fortuitous encounter, our strength will be able to improve further. The few Emperor Gu hiding around the cold snow pavilion suddenly made a decision. Rumble. In the sky, the space opposite Hanueli was suddenly torn apart. 4 figures walked out of the space. Among the 4 figures, there were both young and old. Every single one of them possessed astonishing power of the heavens and earth. All 4 of them were ancient emperors. The old man leading them was an 8 Calamity Emperor Gu. The 3 people behind him were 7 Calamity Emperor Gu. Such strength was enough to control a continent in the Daluo star field. What's going on? They're not friendly. Pavilion Master, be careful. Countless disciples of the Cold Snow Pavilion were extremely nervous when they saw the arrival of the four people. The arrival of the four people was obviously not friendly. Honorable Sir, we're here for no other reason than to make a deal with you. If you hand over the inheritance of your cultivation, the four of us are willing to help you pass through the heavenly tribulation. What do you think? The 8 Calamity Emperor Gu looked at Han Yueli and went straight to the point. With his knowledge, he could naturally see that the most amazing thing about Han Yueli was not the spiritual weapon, but the cultivation technique that Han Yueli cultivated. It should be said that it was the inheritance of Han Yueli. Because of this inheritance, Han Yueli had the power to destroy the tribulation clouds. Therefore, the four of them had come for the inheritance of Han Yueli. Hearing the old man's words, Han Yueli's expression did not change. She did not speak. She did not even look at the four people. She did not even pay attention to the four people's words. Honorable Sir, it's just handing over the inheritance. It's not a loss for you. You're going through the heavenly tribulation today, which is extremely dangerous. If we attack, you'll definitely die. At that time, we can still obtain your inheritance. Chapter 1482. These four weren't the only ancient emperors who were hostile to Han Yueli and want to take advantage of her misfortune. There were 20 to 30 ancient emperors and a few true emperors hiding near freezing snow pavilion. These true emperors had great ambitions. Killing an Emperor Gu would be the equivalent of reaching the heavens in a single bound. For example, although Chu Fengmian had obtained countless fortuitous encounters, when he had first killed Old Man Sorbonne, it had also brought him great benefits. If this was true for Chu Fengmian, it will be even more true for others. As Emperor Gu, I'm willing to talk to you because you've had a hard time cultivating. Don't blame us for not giving you face if you insist on not handing them over. The old man's cold eyes stare at Han Yueli. The threat in his words was self-evident. Murderous intent surged in his eyes. Kill. With a wave of his hand, the 3-7 Tribulation Emperor Gu behind him began to gather spirit energy, ready to attack. How dare a bunch of weaklings threaten my woman? At this moment, a figure silently appeared next to Han Yueli. Even the old man didn't notice this person's arrival. It wasn't until he heard Chu Fengmian's voice that he noticed that there was an additional person next to Han Yueli. A quasi-emperor? The old man sized up Chu Fengmian with a puzzled look. How could a quasi-emperor suddenly appear next to Han Yueli without him noticing? Don't worry about your tribulation. Leave these weaklings to me. Chu Fengmian said casually. He didn't intend to help Han Yueli, but he wouldn't allow anyone to disturb Han Yueli either. All of you scram. Get out of the 9 realms, and I'll spare your lives. The old man was taken aback by Chu Fengmian's words. The 3-7 Tribulation Emperor Gu behind him were equally stunned. A puny quasi-emperor? You dare to pretend to be a hero and stick your neck out? 7 Calamity Emperor Gu, who was standing behind the old man, suddenly burst into laughter and said coldly to Chu Fengmian, "Looks like you're a native of this tiny 9 regions. You're indeed arrogant and don't know the immensity of heaven and earth." The 7 Tribulations Emperor Gu said with killing intent in his eyes. "Let me teach you a lesson. A puny boundary emperor is nothing but an ant in the Daluo star field." The moment he spoke, the 7 Tribulations ancient emperor made his move. With a flip of his palm, a long saber condensed in his hand and slashed towards Chu Fengmian. The dazzling saber light was so fast that it approached Chu Fengmian's throat in an instant. "Brat, remember to be wiser in your next life." The 7 Tribulations Emperor Gu laughed sinisterly. But before he could finish his smile, his voice suddenly stopped. Dragon scales began to form around Chu Fengmian's body. When the blade landed on the dragon scales, it was unable to move them at all. Then, the dragon scales gathered together and transformed into a dragon claw. It descended from the sky and slammed into the body of the 7 Tribulations ancient emperor. Bam! The dragon claw bombarded down, causing the world to tremble. The body of the 7 Tribulations Emperor Gu was immediately crushed and smashed to the ground, turning into a pool of blood. A 7 Tribulations Emperor Gu, who was so arrogant and tyrannical just a moment ago, was smashed to the ground and destroyed. This scene shocked countless people in the surroundings. The disciples of the cold snow pavilion were fine, but Han Yueli's tribulation attracted a large number of experts from the 9 regions. This was especially true for the true emperors who wanted to take advantage of the situation. All of them widened their eyes in disbelief. This was an Emperor Gu, a 7 tribulations Emperor Gu. Even the weakest among them was an Emperor Gu, countless times stronger than a true emperor. In any faction, the ancient emperor was a big shot. Even in a faction like the Holy Dragon Mystery Dimension, the ancient emperor was no exception. They hadn't even sensed Chu Fengmian's strength. However, Chu Fengmian could easily kill an ancient emperor. His strength went without saying. Your Excellency, hiding your head and showing your tail isn't the way of a gentleman. The old Emperor Gu glared at Chu Fengmian and coldly said. He didn't believe that Chu Fengmian was only a quasi-emperor. Killing Emperor Gu with one move wasn't something he could do with his strength. Even if Chu Fengmian wasn't a 9 tribulations Emperor Gu, he was still a top figure among the 8 tribulations emperors. Such a character couldn't be a nobody. A group of villains who take advantage of a burning house dares to call themselves gentlemen? Chu Fengmian looked at the old man and said with disdain, "Scram, or you'll all end up like this person." Chu Fengmian said, while looking at the Emperor Gu, who was turned into a bloody mist. He suddenly made a grabbing motion. This bloody mist flew towards Chu Fengmian's palm. At the same time, Chu Fengmian channeled his heaven-devouring secret art and turned it into a vortex in his palm. He wanted to completely devour and refine the blood mist. No. The 7 tribulations, Emperor Gu panicked. The Emperor Gu only lost a part of his strength after losing his physical body. He could reform his physical body again. However, once the blood essence was refined, he would die completely, and there would be no possibility of resurrection. Chu Fengmian grabbed the blood essence tightly in his palm. He couldn't break free from Chu Fengmian's grasp, even if he wanted to. "Sir, please stop. We are all from the Qi Lin Shan. Please give us some face and let him go." The old Emperor Gu hurriedly revealed his identity when he saw Chu Fengmian's actions. The Qi Lin Shan? Most of the disciples of the Cold Snow Pavilion didn't know this name. However, the Sword Slayer Lord and the others were shocked when they heard it. They were also aware of the turmoil in the 9 domains. This was especially true for the 4 major forces of the Daluo Star Domain. The 4 people before them were all Emperor Gu. They probably had an extremely high status in the Qi Lin Shan. Killing them was equivalent to making an enemy out of the Qi Lin Shan. Only Chu Fengmian's expression didn't change when he heard the old man's words. "People from the Qi Lin Shan? I've already killed a few trash who didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. The few of you won't make a difference." Chu Fengmian smiled disdainfully. "It's fine if you don't say it. Qi Lin Shan, you're all going to die today." Chu Fengmian still remembered that the people who wanted to propose marriage to Luo Shi were all from the Qi Lin Shan. Chu Fengmian didn't have a good impression of the people from the Qi Lin Shan. Chu Fengmian wasn't afraid of the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu. He even dared to destroy the law enforcement hall. Why would he be afraid of the people from the Qi Lin Shan? Chapter 1483. He killed without any hesitation. So what if they were from Qi Lin Mountain? Only death awaited those who provoked Chu Fengmian. The 7 tribulation ancient emperor was refined into a blood elixir in Chu Fengmian's hand. This blood elixir still contained a dazzling golden light. Chu Fengmian had not only condensed his essence blood, but also the laws of heaven and earth of the 7 tribulation ancient emperor into this blood elixir. This blood pill was almost all of the power of the 7 tribulation Emperor Gu. Luo He. Chu Fengmian glanced at the crowd and pointed his palm. The blood pill flew towards Luo He. Luo He was the strongest among the people in Han Shui Pavilion. In the current environment of the 9 territories, if a force did not have an Emperor Master, a few cultivators would be enough to wipe them out. Luo He's realm had reached the peak of the immortal realm. This blood pill was just right for her to help her step into the Emperor realm. "Many thanks, young master." Luo He took the blood pill and was overjoyed. She swallowed it and sat down in Han Shui Pavilion to refine it. The faces of the several Emperor Gu from Qi Lin Mountain were extremely ugly, especially the old man from the 8 tribulation Emperor Gu. His eyes were fixed on Chu Fengmian. Your Excellency is quite capable. It seems that Your Excellency does not put our Qilin Mountain in your eyes." The old man's face was extremely ugly. He had already announced his identity and said that he was Emperor Gu from Qilin Mountain. Not to mention in Daluo Star Field. Even in the neighboring star fields, how many people did not know about Qilin Mountain? Not to mention in this small 9 territories that had already declined. However, after hearing his words, Chu Fengmian almost completely ignored him. He said he would kill, and he didn't care about his threats at all. This made the old man extremely angry. How dare a few insignificant natives of the 9 territories be so presumptuous? Very well, why don't you all join forces and kill this boy? Kill him and all his fortuitous encounters. We'll divide them equally. The old man suddenly shouted. He also knew that they were not the only ones who had come to take advantage of Han Yueli. It was unknown how many experts were hiding in the vicinity of the Cold Snow Pavilion. This call spread around the Cold Snow Pavilion, and all the experts who were hiding in the void heard it. That's right. A few insignificant natives of the 9 regions are too arrogant. They don't put our Daluo Star Field in their eyes at all. They do need to be taught a lesson. Bang! Just as the old man finished speaking, the sky was suddenly torn apart, and a figure appeared. A surge of the power of heaven and earth poured down from the crack. Many disciples of the Cold Snow Pavilion could not bear this surge of power. The faces of the Sword Slayer Monarch and the others turned ugly. Although they were not powerful and were unable to interfere in the battle, they were able to tell that the person who had arrived was most definitely incomparably frightening. He was not inferior to that old man. His spiritual energy was so strong that it was unimaginable. Another 8 tribulations Emperor Gu had appeared. So it's Emperor Gu. The old man looked at the person who had arrived and laughed. Great Whale Emperor Gu, the overlord of the vast sea of the Daluo Star Field. Although Chu Fengmian had not seen this person before, he had heard the name Great Whale Emperor Gu. He was the overlord of the vast sea. It was said that the vast sea was an extremely strange continent. Most of the regions in the vast sea were submerged by the sea, and it was a boundless sea. The Great Whale Emperor Gu was a dragon whale in the vast sea. He had an amazing encounter that allowed him to step into the 8 tribulations Emperor Gu's level. The dragon whale's body was considered incomparably huge among the monster beast clan, and its spiritual energy was extremely strong. In terms of spiritual energy alone, 100 human martial artists might not be able to compete with the Great Whale Emperor Gu. The experts among the 8 tribulations Emperor Gu were not inferior to Great Elder He Chun and the others. However, Chu Fengmian was not afraid of people of this level. The only thing he was worried about now was the existence of the 9 tribulations Emperor Gu. Today, whoever dares to take a step forward will die. Chu Fengmian's eyes flickered as he waved his hand. Suddenly, a wave of spiritual energy surrounded the Cold Snow Pavilion and turned into a circle. The Great Whale Emperor Gu and the 3 Emperor Gus of the Qilin Mountain were enveloped in it. What an arrogant kid. If I don't teach you a lesson today, you'll think that there is no one in the Daluo Star Field? The Great Whale Emperor Gu could not help but show some anger when he saw Chu Fengmian's relaxed expression. This attitude showed that he was looking down on him, and 8 tribulations Emperor Gu. Is that so? A group of useless chickens and pottery dogs can't enter my eyes. It's useless no matter how many of them there are. Chu Fengmian said indifferently. Everyone, come at me together. There's no need to hide and waste time. When Chu Fengmian spoke, he looked at the surroundings of the Cold Snow Pavilion. This sentence was obviously not said to the Great Whale Emperor Gu, but to the Emperor Gu hidden outside the Cold Snow Pavilion. Is this kid crazy? Does he really think that he is invincible? Does he intend to become enemies with all of us? What an arrogant kid. He must be taught a lesson. Many of the Emperor Gu hidden in the shadows did not have the intention to attack, but now that they heard Chu Fengmian's words, they were furious. As Emperor Gu, there were no small figures. They were all important figures of the major forces. Chu Fengmian's words could be said to have provoked all of them. The gazes that were looking at Chu Fengmian became unfriendly as they glared at Chu Fengmian. Just the 3 Emperor Gu of the Qilin Mountain and the Great Whale Emperor Gu alone. There were very few 8 tribulations Emperor Gu in the Daluo Star Field who could contend with them. Under such circumstances, Chu Fengmian still dared to be arrogant. Kid, since you're courting death, don't blame us. Whoosh. Another two figures flew out from the sky. The two Emperor Gu, Jiang Yin and Jiang Yun of the Avalon of 5 elements. These two Emperor Gu are biological brothers. Although they are both 7 tribulations Emperor Gu, their minds are connected. When they join forces, their strength is stronger than many 8 tribulations Emperor Gu. Seeing these two figures, many people around the cold snow pavilion recognized them and cried out in surprise. There was a huge gap between the 7 tribulations Emperor Gu and the 8 tribulations Emperor Gu. Even 10 7 tribulations Emperor Gu would find it difficult to contend with an 8 tribulations Emperor Gu, let alone an 8 tribulations Emperor Gu. However, the two Emperor Gu, Jiang Yin and Jiang Yun, were able to defeat an 8 tribulations Emperor Gu when they joined forces. This was enough to prove their strength. These two were also the famous twin Emperor Gu. Chapter 1484. Emperor Gu's older brother, Jiang Yin, glared at Chu Fengmian and shouted, "Lad, your aptitude is rare even in the Avalon of 5 elements. Your true cultivation level shouldn't be that of an ancient emperor, right? Not Emperor Gu? Then he is a true emperor? He's a true emperor?" The ancient emperors and true emperors around Cold Snow Pavilion were startled and began discussing in disbelief. They couldn't see through Chu Fengmian's cultivation. To be more exact, they only saw him as a quasi-emperor. However, judging from the strength that Chu Fengmian had just displayed, no one had ever treated Chu Fengmian as a quasi-emperor. After all, Chu Fengmian had killed a 7 tribulation ancient emperor as easily as crushing an ant. Such strength was definitely not something a quasi-emperor could achieve. That's why they assumed that Chu Fengmian cultivated a special merit law to hide his cultivation. Therefore, when he appeared, he was only at the quasi-emperor realm. But now, Jiang Yan's words hit them in the head. Chu Fengmian wasn't Emperor Gu? Was he a true emperor? It was shocking enough for a 6 tribulation true emperor to kill a 7 tribulation ancient emperor so easily. Moreover, Chu Fengmian's cultivation? Chu Fengmian was only a quasi-emperor? At the thought of this, many of the ancient emperors, who had no intention of making a move, started to get restless. Geniuses who could fight across realms didn't only have heaven-defying talents, they also had heaven-defying fortunes. Killing Emperor Gu as a quasi-emperor? Just how heaven-defying must one's fortune be in order to accomplish this? Even I can't help but want to fight such a genius. A cloud of black fog suddenly flew out. When this cloud of black fog appeared, it covered the sky and covered the sun. Within this black fog, an old man slowly appeared. This old man was extremely skinny. In fact, he looked like a skeleton. He was all skin and bones. He looked extremely vicious. His voice was extremely hoarse, causing people to feel uncomfortable when they heard it. At the same time, Chu Fengmian could tell that this old man was an 8 tribulation ancient emperor. Old dried bone. That old guy can't wait anymore. We didn't hear about him coming to the 9 realms. This guy has always been ruthless. Looks like this brat didn't have a great fortune or he wouldn't have come out. The ancient emperors and true emperors around Cold Snow Pavilion were even more shocked than when they saw the twin emperors. Their voices became even louder. Old dried bone, you want to get involved too? The ancient whale emperor stared at Elder Driedbone, his eyes flashing with wariness and hostility. Elder Witheredbone was indeed strange and difficult to deal with. Moreover, he was extremely ruthless. It was said that many 8 tribulation ancient emperors had died in his hands. No one wanted to be associated with him. I only want this person's fortune. Golden Bamboo, didn't you say that anyone could get a share? Old Driedbone looked over at the old man from Firstwood Mountain. After all, they had all appeared under his command. Kill this brat, and you'll get a share of his fortune. The old man named Golden Bamboo pondered for a moment before nodding. Including the twin Emperor Gu, they had 4 Emperor Gu on their side. Moreover, it wasn't just the twin Emperor Gu. Old Dried Bone, Giant Whale Emperor Gu, and more than a dozen 7 Emperor Gu also showed up. After hearing that Chu Fengmian was only a quasi-emperor, they couldn't wait any longer and came to get a share of the loot. Of course, they couldn't get the lion's share. However, After seeing Chu Fengmian's heaven-defying fortune, even a share of the loot would be a great fortune for them. More than a dozen Emperor Gu surrounded Chu Fengmian, each of them emitting an incomparably terrifying power and accumulating it. In the next moment, it seemed as if they were going to explode with power and completely kill Chu Fengmian here. Jiang Yin also sized up Chu Fengmian and said, "It's a pity that you don't know how to take a step back with such aptitude. If you had taken a step back today, you wouldn't have fallen to such a state. Your future is limitless, but it's a pity that you're going to die prematurely today." Jiang Yin and Jiang Yun made no attempt to conceal the killing intent in their words. Today, so many Emperor Gu had attacked together and had no intention of letting Chu Fengmian go. The only solution today was Chu Fengmian's death. "You're not qualified to make me take a step back," Chu Fengmian said coldly. "This is the freezing snow pavilion. Since you dare to come in today, none of you should plan to leave. I'll kill you today and let others see the consequences of making an enemy out of me." Chu Fengmian's gaze swept across the crowd. Arrogant and conceited, Jiang Yin snorted coldly. "Young man, such arrogance will only bring disaster to you. Admit defeat now, and we'll let you die a quick death." Giant Whale Emperor Gu also said, "Keek, don't waste your breath on this brat. If you don't attack, this old man will." Elder Dried Bone stared at Chu Fengmian. The greed in his small eyes was undisguised. "Kill!" Golden Bamboo Emperor Gu of Qilin Mountain shouted angrily. In an instant, all Emperor Gu attacked. More than a dozen Emperor Gu present had accumulated enough power. At this moment, they attacked together and bombarded Chu Fengmian with killing moves. "Little bastard, how dare you kill my Qilin Mountain Emperor Gu? Today, I'll use your blood as a sacrifice to him." Golden Bamboo Emperor Gu roared wildly. With a roar, a golden bamboo appeared in his palm. This golden bamboo seemed to have the power to contain the world's power. The power of the other Emperor Gu present was integrated into this golden bamboo and condensed in an instant. Boom! The golden bamboo swept down. It was at least tens of thousands of feet long. Everything that came into contact with the ordinary-looking golden bamboo was annihilated by the power contained within. The combined power of more than a dozen Emperor Gu was enough to destroy everything. Heaven and earth trembled. The golden bamboo swept towards Chu Fengmian and ruthlessly slapped at him. Boom! In the air, Chu Fengmian's body collided with the golden bamboo. It seemed that the speed of the golden bamboo was too fast for Chu Fengmian to dodge. He collided with the golden bamboo with his body. Boom! Terrifying power poured out and shrouded Chu Fengmian's body. Heaven and earth collapsed, and Chu Fengmian was at the center of the collapse. Is this brat dead? He's dead for sure. How can he survive such power? Chapter 1485. Everyone gasped in shock as they watched the terrifying golden bamboo sweep everything in its path. The combined power of more than 10 Emperor Gu was extremely terrifying. As for Chu Fengmian, who was at the center of it all, under such terrifying power, even the strongest Emperor Gu would die, let alone Chu Fengmian, who was only a quasi-emperor. Even though Chu Fengmian had a heaven-defying opportunity, the gap between their realms still existed. Finally, the spiritual energy gradually dissipated, and a figure suddenly walked out from the bombardment. What? He's not dead? Seeing the figure walking out, one of the ancient emperors widened his eyes in disbelief. Even 8 Calamities Emperor Gu wouldn't be able to survive such a powerful bombardment, but Chu Fengmian was still alive. Furthermore, it was only after Chu Fengmian appeared that the crowd noticed that there was not the slightest injury on his body. He was completely unharmed. Emperor Gu of Golden Bamboo, Emperor Gu of Giant Whale, and the others looked at each other, unable to accept this result. If they hadn't seen Chu Fengmian walk out from the center of the spiritual energy with their own eyes, they would have thought that Chu Fengmian wasn't hit at all. Chu Fengmian's half-step immortal real body couldn't cause any injury to him unless it was a one-hit kill. Is this person's body still human? Even 9 Calamities Emperor Gu might not be able to come out unscathed. Some Emperor Gu were dumbfounded. It wasn't possible to kill a 9 Calamities Emperor Gu under such an attack, but it wasn't possible for a 9 Calamities Emperor Gu to come out unscathed either. Chu Fengmian's body, from top to bottom, was completely unscathed. Even Chu Fengmian's spiritual energy had not changed at all. It was as if blocking this attack was an extremely easy thing to do. Too weak. Chu Fengmian's gaze swept across the crowd. This group of people was even weaker than the group of Emperor Gu, who tried to kill Chu Fengmian at the 100 Halls conference. They couldn't cause any injury to Chu Fengmian even if they joined forces. You useless chickens and pottery dogs? How dare you come to the cold snow pavilion? Chu Fengmian glanced at the crowd with disdain in his eyes. Luo Shi, who was standing at the side, had no intention of making a move. Chu Fengmian alone was enough to deal with these people. Brat, don't be arrogant. The giant whale Emperor Gu was furious after hearing Chu Fengmian's words. As an Emperor Gu, he had never been so disdained. Rumble. Emperor Gu's body started to swell with this roar. The power in his body also started to rise as his body changed. Roar. A dragon's roar rang out. In the sky above, a gigantic dragon whale appeared. This was Emperor Gu's true form. The gigantic dragon whale appeared and crashed toward Chu Fengmian. There was no skill involved. It was just pure power. The most powerful thing about the dragon whale was its power. The power of a dragon whale was hundreds of times greater than that of a warrior of the same realm. When the huge dragon whale moved in the air, it shook the earth. Longjing, your bloodline is enough. Unfortunately, it's nothing in front of me. Chu Fengmian's eyes flashed. Suddenly, a dragon's roar rang out from his mouth. The primordial battle dragon essence blood in Chu Fengmian's body and the bloodline power of ancestor Tianlong were completely awakened. A dragon's might shrouded the area. Emperor Gu's body stiffened. His face was full of disbelief. He felt an incomparably noble power from Chu Fengmian's body. It was a power that made him submit. Kneel. Chu Fengmian's eyes swept across Emperor Gu. It was as if an incomparably ancient dragon emperor was staring at him. His bloodline was also the bloodline of the dragon clan. Moreover, it wasn't an ordinary dragon clan bloodline. It was enough to be on equal footing with the primordial battle dragon. However, Chu Fengmian's bloodline had the bloodline of the ancestor of all dragons, ancestor Tianlong. The moment Chu Fengmian's dragon's might shrouded him, Emperor Gu went crazy. He wanted to resist, but the power in his bloodline was suppressed. Boom! The incomparably huge primordial dragon whale suddenly fell to the ground. It was as if he was kneeling on the ground. He trembled and didn't dare to raise his head to look at Chu Fengmian. What happened? What's going on? At this moment, many of the ancient emperors were still in a daze. Emperor Gu was actually defeated without a fight and knelt on the ground. Only Emperor Gu knew that this was a kind of pressure that he couldn't resist. It was a kind of suppression from his bloodline. In the face of this dragon's might, he could only submit. With just a few words, he made an 8 Tribulation Emperor Gu kneel in front of him. Even 9 Tribulation Emperor Gu, or a half-step Celestial Realm expert, might not be able to do this. But now, Chu Fengmian did it. Others couldn't do it, but Chu Fengmian could. Countless eyes looked at Chu Fengmian in fear. This kind of means was inhuman. They had never heard of anyone who could subdue an 8 Tribulation Emperor Gu with just a few words. The power of this person's bloodline is strange. An innate divine beast. Only the bloodline of an innate divine beast can make the giant whale Emperor Gu so afraid. Elder Driedbone was the most senior among all of them. He looked at Chu Fengmian and saw the mystery at a glance. Emperor Gu was completely suppressed by Chu Fengmian's bloodline power. Chu Fengmian most likely had the noble bloodline of the dragon clan in him to be able to do this. But although the bloodline power could suppress Emperor Gu, it couldn't suppress them. Don't be afraid. He's just a quasi-emperor. Just kill him. With that, Elder Drybone's figure turned into a cloud of black mist and rushed toward Chu Fengmian. The moment he got close to Chu Fengmian, bone-like palms suddenly grabbed at him from the black mist. Sword. Chu Fengmian's gaze swept over and glanced at them. Several black sword lights suddenly flew out from Chu Fengmian's side. These black sword lights immediately slashed towards Chu Fengmian. The skeleton-like palms were all shattered. At the same time, more black sword lights flew out from the freezing snow pavilion. Heaven-grade spiritual weapons. So many heaven-grade spiritual weapons? There were thousands of sword lights flying over. For experts of their level, a heaven-grade spiritual weapon was indeed not worth their attention. But these heaven-grade spiritual swords were something that even they couldn't ignore. In particular, these thousands of black spiritual swords flew out and formed a sword formation in the air. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.